How a Slime Can Survive in Teyvat. Chapter 1-20. Chapter 1, Nigerundeo. Wah wah wah. After stepping into thin air, the expected pain didn't arrive. Instead, a strange, coarse, grainy sensation smeared across my face. Liyue blinked. The dazzling, bright sunlight spilled down lazily, as if it were just an ordinary morning. Did my roof spring a leak? Liyue shook her head as if to shake away the hallucination before her eyes. However, in Ether's eyes, this hydro slime that had suddenly popped out was making a expression. Ether looked at the dull blade in his hand in a daze. It seemed he hadn't even attacked yet. So, this is probably just a cowardly slime? Seeing that the little slime wasn't attacking him, Ether wasn't some cold-blooded player or material-obsessed maniac. Thus, after a glance at the slime, he stepped across the beach toward Paimon in the distance. Compared to an inconspicuous slime, the teleport waypoints glowing red in the distance concerned Ether more. After all, things like teleport waypoints only appear in games, right? As for why Liyue was currently motionless, no need to doubt it, her brain had completely crashed. Where is this? This mountain? This water? This beach? This blonde guy? Teyvat. Looking at the all-too-familiar image of the golden-haired prince before her, Liyue stiffly moved her hand. Wait, where are my hands? Liyue looked up and down, only to find a round, bulging body with light blue gradient patterns, an oval shape, and a conspicuous LV.1 floating above her head. Okay, a genuine hydro slime. To add, with less than 100 HP, it only takes a few slashes to kill, and it doesn't even drop any good materials. In the past, Liyue wouldn't have even spared a glance at such dog food swords. Even when she first created her account and opened the story treasure chest, this sword hadn't stayed in her character's hand for more than 5 minutes. But at this moment, Liyue watched the dull blade with an ATK of only a dozen or so points and swallowed nervously. Don't come over here. Fortunately, the blonde guy before her wasn't a Teyvat player but a genuine traveler, so he had no interest in the slime that had suddenly appeared. Liyue watched as Ether sheathed his sword and ran toward Paimon in the distance, letting out a long sigh of relief. She looked left and right, waiting for the right moment. Without hesitation, Liyue turned around and bounced away. Nigerundeo. Although she still didn't understand what had just happened, what if Ether suddenly changed his mind? She was just a poor little slime, who knew if she could respawn if she suddenly died. After hiding behind a towering rock, Liyue peeked out halfway, watching as Ether and Paimon gradually disappeared from sight along the path. Safe. For now. Once there was no danger around, Liyue finally had time to calm down and review her situation. And this familiar screen before her eyes. Isn't this exactly the control interface after logging into the game? Liyue skillfully clicked on the character profile. Character, Hydro Slime, Juvenile. Level, 1. Element, Hydro. Weapon, empty, none. Artifact, empty, none. Constellation, Starry Sky. Talents, not unlocked. Profile, not unlocked. Great, just great. Am I playing with a Genshin monster system? Liyue's gaze shifted to the character description in the bottom right corner. A sentient slime that seems to come from a mysterious, unknown world. Liyue's entire body wrinkled into a ball. This evaluation couldn't be more accurate. So, her sudden appearance here wasn't an accident? Unfortunately, the interface before her was just an ordinary screen, it hadn't grown a mouth and couldn't answer Liyue's questions. Liyue looked up at the sun gradually sinking in the sky and shivered. The temperature was dropping, and she didn't want to bet on whether being too cold would cause her to lose HP. It seemed the first problem she needed to solve was how to survive successfully. The traveler had already gone far. With Liyue's familiarity with this map, no hilly churls or other monsters would appear here. Liyue controlled her body and bounced toward the distant waypoint. Although she hadn't figured out what was going on, since she had decided to survive, she had to do something, right? Liyue let out a huge sigh of relief when she saw the familiar words unlock waypoint. At least she didn't have to worry about being beaten to death. The teleport away from the spot method was definitely her life-saving miracle during her newbie days. But still. Liyue looked at the game interface in her hand, then at the lit-up waypoint. It would be a waste not to cause some trouble this time. A bold idea instantly popped into Liyue's head. Since this is a game world, with my knowledge of these monsters and treasure chests, wouldn't getting some EXP be easy as pie? For example, I can't take on treasure chests guarded by monsters, but wouldn't those unlocked common treasure chests be easy? Thinking back to when she was farming the overworld with the Inmo treasure compass, every time she found a common treasure chest, she would silently curse the developers, did you really put this here for humans to open? And those hellishly hidden treasure chests, did you really think your design was good? But now, maybe she could thank them a little. Mondstadt has the most common treasure chests, looting them all should get her to level 20, right? Liyue followed the route Ether had taken toward Starfell Lake, picking up treasure chests along the way. After all, before she had any other healing methods, Statue of the Seven, please love me again. After eating a few EXP books to reach level 7, Liyue finally arrived at her destination. However, there was a classic question. Does a hydro slime dissolve in water? Liyue stood blankly by the lake, looking at the statue not far away, unable to take a single step forward. Very well, miHoYo. Why did you have to add learning to swim in a lake to your tutorial? I think it would have been great to have it at the starting point, maybe you could have even included a treasure chest to motivate and retain new players. Unfortunately, there are no ifs. Liyue didn't stop, immediately turning to run toward Wind Rise. Nothing could stop a player's desire to become stronger. Finally, after a day and a night, Liyue saw the statue at Wind Rise. Along the way, she found 10 common treasure chests, 6 small lamp grass, 5 calla lilies, some sunset TIAs and berries, and unlocked 2 waypoints. If anyone passed by, they would see a LV.1 Hydro Slime charging no, bouncing relentlessly toward the Inmo Archon's statue. Touching the familiar statue, Liyue was so tired she almost collapsed into a pancake. Bouncing around in a slime's body was no different from a frog jump test in PE class, life without legs was simply too grueling. Bathed in the statue's radiance, Liyue finally lit up a part of the map. Exploration progress, 2%. Good. A Teyvat hardcore player cannot stand to see that. Liyue looked up. A layer of grey clouds had already gathered over Mondstadt, with a swirling storm. Even from this distance, Liyue could feel its intensity. Calculating the time, the storm terror plot should have already begun over there. In an instant, Liyue suddenly missed honey roast carrot and sweet madam. If those weren't available, chicken mushroom skewers would do. So, Liyue turned her gaze toward the cranes by the pool. Sorry about this. I'm just a cute little slime, what bad intentions could I have? Little white crane, don't run. Sure enough, even when Liyue ran right up to the little white crane's feet, it had no intention of fleeing. After all, it was just a slime, they weren't hostile species to cranes, and no slime would eat meat. Liyue instantly harvested 5 pieces of fowl. Combined with the other materials from the treasure chests, now all she needed was a pot. Liyue's eyes scanned the area and saw 3 hilly churls dancing around a pot not far away. Time for my pro gamer moves. With my positioning, if these 3 hilly churls can hit me, I'll admit defeat. I'll bet my dignity as a 3-year Teyvat veteran. Liyue struck first, using a charged slam to knock one hilly churl right next to the fire. Yay! The hilly churl turned back to Liyue in confusion, seemingly wondering why it was being attacked by a slime, and didn't immediately retaliate. Liyue wasn't going to let this golden opportunity slip. She continued her charged slams, her physical ATK of 28 points hitting 2 in a row. The hilly churls died on the spot. In just 3 rounds, Liyue ruthlessly obtained 3 damaged masks and tossed them into her inventory without a second glance. My chicken mushroom skewers, here I come. Chapter 2, Hardcore Player, a terrifying creature. From level 1 to 20, or even 40, for a creature like a hardcore player, it might indeed be pitifully short. After finishing 5 chicken mushroom skewers, perhaps bolstered by the confidence from just defeating monsters, everything from an abyss mage down to a slime turned into materials as long as it appeared before Liyue, lying peacefully in the inventory. My friend has an unrivaled ability, never letting any treasure chest that appears before them slip away. As long as it's a treasure chest, it's impossible for it to escape Liyue's eyes. A famous saying of a Teyvat hardcore player. Although a slime cannot use a sword, Liyue has already mastered countless ways to use a catalyst. For instance, right now, Liyue has a level 20 pocket grimoire on their head and is sitting on a level 20 magic guide. These are the best pieces of equipment Liyue obtained after looting dozens of treasure chests. Hydro element is truly the most core element in Teyvat. Liyue's favorite is the pyro slime, every hit is a bullseye. However, Liyue also discovered a problem. The level of the hilly churls is rising. And it wasn't increasing along with Liyue's level. After all, before reaching level 20, the levels of these monsters hadn't moved. But as the storm over Mondstadt city disappeared, Liyue watched as the hilly churls in front of them turned into level 10. So, do the levels of monsters in the open world upgrade according to the progression of the plot? Liyue suddenly felt a sense of crisis. They could still easily bully hilly churls now at level 20, but would it still be this easy when they reached level 40? Moreover, the conditions for their own upgrade were truly. Liyue looked at the panel. It's reasonable for a level 40 hydro slime to use a cleansing heart, right? Reasonable my foot. That thing is in Liyue. Besides, their skills are hydro element, they're immune, okay? Although physical attacks like a slam could be used, Liyue always felt they might end up being knocked around by a mimic pig like a bouncy ball. And what if 3 flying ones are spawned? Am I supposed to hit them with my head? Liyue shook off the messy thoughts in their head. Since I'm already here, make the best of it. First, grind through Mondstadt, then grind through Liyue. Sorry, Ether, from now on, every one of your treasure chests is mine. Liyue abandoned the main quest and plunged into the land. Whether it was ley lines or puzzles, as long as it could be opened, Liyue didn't plan to let a single one go. On the other side, Ether had just resolved Storm Terror's storm with Ember, Kaya, and Lisa, and was standing in front of Katharine's counter preparing to take the daily commissions. Ad Astra Abyssosk. Welcome to the Adventurers Guild. Paimon waved at Catharine. Hello, Miss Catharine. Are there any commissions today? Catharine immediately explained the situation upon seeing Ether approach. Hello Paimon, I do have a task here posted by a resident of Springvale. Recently, the wild boars in Springvale have been hunted in large numbers, radishes in the fields have vanished, fruit from carts parked by the road has been taken, and even the Phalanemo mushrooms on the roofs disappeared overnight. Not even a single sweet flower can be seen on the ground. So, I would like to commission an adventurer to investigate the situation. Paimon's eyes immediately widened, leaning forward, that's too much. Is it some kind of phantom thief? It couldn't be the treasure hoarders, right? A magnetic voice interjected, the treasure hoarders wouldn't be interested in radishes in the fields. Paimon looked at the newcomer. Wow, it's Kaya. Why is Kaya here? Kaya looked at Paimon and said, actually, my people have also noticed that the wilderness hasn't been peaceful lately. The hilly churls that were originally stationed outside Mondstadt city have all disappeared, and even Dadapa Gorge further away is empty. The most incomprehensible thing is that only some traces of hydro element were found at the scene. I'm afraid some extraordinary creature has appeared. I was just about to head out of the city to investigate when I ran into you. Paimon was even more surprised now, even the hilly churls have disappeared. That's too strange. Could it be Storm Terror's doing? It couldn't possibly be a slime, right? Ether also mused, it can't be Storm Terror. Storm Terror doesn't use hydro element. It seems we need to investigate thoroughly. Lingyi clearly didn't know they had already attracted attention from various sides. Because it was inconvenient for a slime to appear, they needed to avoid crowds. Lingyi would sneak near Springvale in the dead of night, adhering to the principle of take it and run, never looking back along the way, and even less aware of what happened behind them. Having finished grinding through the upper half of Teyvat under the cover of darkness, Lingyi naturally had no reason to turn back and headed straight for the snow mountain. After all, if you want to talk about where the fattest treasure chests are, it's definitely the snow mountain. Storm Terror's lair isn't open yet, and they can't enter Mondstadt city, so what better place is there? Of course, it was also to prepare for opening up Liyue. It's most convenient for the traveler to go through Stone Gate, but for a slime, the Millilith won't let you pass. Therefore, Lingyi felt they needed to prepare at least 3 sets of artifacts, 1 set for HP and Def for daily exploration to prevent sudden death, and 2 sets for monster grinding physical ATK for Hydro attribute enemies, and ATK/Hydro/crit for the rest. There were also various weapons, Elemental Mastery, ATK, and HP. Not a single one could be missing. Each one needed to be raised to at least level 20. This was no small number, so all Lingyi needed were more treasure chests. And now, Lingyi's attributes had significantly improved. Character, Hydro Slime. Level, 40. Attribute, Hydro. Weapons, Twin Nephrite/Magic Guide/Emerald Orb. Artifacts, Adventurer 4-piece set/Instructor 4-piece set. Constellation, Stella Cuna. Talents, not unlocked. Profile, not unlocked. Base HP, 519. Base Def, 46. Base ATK, 15. Since there was no pyro element to light fires, every step Lingyi took needed to be extremely precise. One mistake could easily lead to the sheer cold value getting too high. And mining a piece of scarlet quartz required Lingyi to slam it at least 10 times. But nothing can stump a hardcore player. Unless you need to fly down for this part, and you don't have a wind glider. I miss you so much, Amber. Chapter 3, Unlocking Wishes. Ding. Shop unlocked, wish unlocked. Lingyi suddenly stopped what he was doing, and in a moment of inattention, was frozen into a block of ice by a cryo-hilly churl shooter. After struggling to break free, he quickly ran some distance away, only stopping by a campfire once those hilly churls had dropped their aggro. Did I hear that right? Wish? Lingyi couldn't wait to open the wish menu. The familiar interface actually brought a bit of a tear to his eye. So, are there other functions that will unlock over time? For example, time adjustment? But Lingyi also noticed another thing, whether it was the world level or the opening of the wish shop, both seemed related to the traveler's quest progress. Although he didn't know why such a connection existed, Lingyi knew he would probably have to find a way to seek out the traveler. Firstly, he could keep track of the world's progress at any time to unlock other functions as soon as possible, like co-op, mail, or even customer service feedback. Secondly, and more importantly, he wanted to see if the world's quests would change because of him. If he unlocked the Skyfrost Nail ahead of time, the traveler's quest wouldn't just disappear, would it? Shaking off the messy thoughts in his head, Lingyi focused his attention on the newly opened wish system. The first tab was indeed the beginner's wish, but since his mail had mysteriously disappeared, he didn't have any beginner benefits and didn't even have a single ball. In the second tab, the rate up banner was nowhere to be seen, there was only a standard permanent pool. Seeing this situation, Lingyi wasn't discouraged. Alright, it's better than nothing. He had opened so many treasure chests that doing a few 10 pulls would be easy. He opened the shop and maxed out his blue balls, he never expected to see such a day. As per tradition, he went for the 20% off beginner's wish. The first 10 pull, Noel plus several weapons. The second 10 pull. Oh, it's little Sucrose. Lingyi hurriedly opened the character interface. Where are the characters I just pulled? They couldn't have glitched out, right? But no matter how Lingyi refreshed, the new characters never appeared. Is this some kind of punishment? But Lingyi wasn't willing to give up yet. Since the weapons hadn't disappeared, it meant the pulls were valid. Lingyi clicked through everything one by one to troubleshoot, finally finding a clue in the talents interface. Breastplate? Isn't that Noel's skill? Now it appeared after his own talents, labeled as skill 1. There was also Noel's burst, placed in the skill 2 slot. As for the third and fourth slots, they were Sucrose's skills. Lingyi immediately closed the interface and cast breastplate on himself. A shimmering golden shield appeared in front of Lingyi. From a distance, he looked like a golden, translucent glutinous rice ball. In other words, although I don't have the characters, I can use their skills. Lingyi's eyes lit up immediately, and he turned to use a teleport. Pure water spirit big sister, here I come. Compared to the area around Liyue Harbor, the vicinity of Kinky Village was much easier to traverse. Those left behind were mostly children and the elderly. After these few days of grinding the earth, Liyue could already flexibly control this body and easily bypass these humans. Moreover, Liyue had mastered a magical way of moving. No matter how high the cliff, he just needed to use one of Sucrose's skills before landing to blow himself back up in immune fall DMG. Anyone seeing this would have to say this slime has become a spirit. Leap of faith. Arriving at the top of Kinky Village, Liyue leapt down from the cliff. With Sucrose's wind, he rolled 3 times on the ground and landed safely. And Liyue, this alien creature, soon caught Rodia's attention. An assassin from our homeland? This one is far too weak. I'm here to seek a trial from you. Liyue propped up his little slime body and looked up at Rodia high above. Oh. Rodia flapped her wings and landed in front of Liyue. Rodia had never seen such a slime and couldn't help but feel a bit curious. Could a sentience born in the form of a slime actually have such grand ideas? I understand. Then let us begin. Rodia then soared into the air. The power of water can take any shape. Coveting the shapes of the living, pure water can take on many forms. Let this water punish you. Half an hour later. He charged into the last little pig, and the pig fell over at the impact. Liyue wiped away invisible sweat. This DMG was far too low, as expected, relying solely on an Mo element DMG was still too difficult. Rodia finally looked at the little hydro slime before her with a bit more respect. A slime that could use multiple elements, though weak, was definitely no ordinary creature. This is your reward. Liyue received the heart of clear water and other miscellaneous items from Rodia's hand. Why are there 2? The extra one is a bonus for you. After saying this, Rodia disappeared before Liyue's eyes, not even giving him a chance to say thank you. Liyue wasn't one to be overly formal and immediately began to ascend. A wonderful sensation surged through his heart. Wait, hands. As his perspective began to rise, Liyue discovered he had actually returned to human form. There happened to be a pool nearby. By his reflection, Liyue could see his appearance clearly. It was exactly the same as before, except his hair had turned blue. The pure water spirit can take on human form, so if I use the heart of clear water, I can also become human. Reasonable, reasonable. However, Liyue's joy didn't last long. Half of the Mondstadt main storyline had already passed. Perhaps he should hurry up and try to make himself known? Chapter 4, Venti. Emerging from the statue of the 7 at Windrise and finally officially stepping onto Mondstadt soil, Liyue felt completely at ease. Even the sweet flowers by the roadside looked particularly pleasing to the eye. Oh right, must pick them along the way. This is the self-cultivation of a hardcore player. And that little lizard next to it, don't you run. As for why not just go straight to Mondstadt city in one step, Liyue had to find an identity for himself, like an adventurer from Fontaine visiting Mondstadt for tourism. Besides, there were still many regrets to settle, such as that unopened statue of the 7, and the challenges that couldn't be done without a wind glider. Destination clear, Mondstadt city, Amber. However, Liyue hadn't expected the timing of meeting Amber to be so early. Near a hilly churl camp by the Temple of the Falcon, Liyue spotted that fiery, passionate girl at a glance, her beautiful ribbon fluttering in the wind. Not far away were several newly spawned hilly churls. Without hesitation, Liyue pulled out a catalyst and unleashed a Sucrose's Q at the nearby hilly churls. Combined with the pyro element from a nearby torch, the hilly churls didn't last 3 seconds before vanishing on the spot. Amber finally noticed the damselette running over from the side path. Her pitch-black eyes were captivating, and she wore a beautiful French-style long dress, appearing like an elegant lady. Most eye-catching of all was her pale blue hair cascading down to her waist. She must be some noble from Fontaine. Still, Amber remembered her status in the Knights of Favonius, stepped quickly toward Liyue, and performed a knightly salute with her hand across her chest. Hello. Thank you for your support. I am Amber of the Knights of Favonius. Strange yet honorable traveler, please state your purpose. Liyue politely returned a curtsy and spoke elegantly. Hello, Miss Amber of the Knights of Favonius. I am Liyue, a fledgling adventurer from Fontaine, here in Mondstadt for tourism. Amber replied, visiting? That's quite unfortunate. Mondstadt has recently been plagued by storm terror. Although you have a vision, Liyue, it's best not to wander the wilderness. Let me escort you into the city. Furthermore. Seeing Amber's hesitant expression, Liyue found it strange. Was there some plot point he didn't know about besides storm terror? Amber secretly leaned close to Liyue's ear, looking mysterious. Lately, a mysterious phantom thief has appeared in the wilderness. Although this thief doesn't steal money or rob passing merchants and travelers, they are instead interested in Mondstadt's flora. Especially some local specialties now, not a single small lamp grass, valberry or even Cecilia can be seen in the forest. Fortunately, they didn't choose to uproot them, so they can still grow back later. However, such a thief who can walk through the wilderness and wipe out countless hilly churl camps was previously unheard of, appearing out of nowhere. So everyone is speculating if it might be the work of the Abyss Order. But that's also hard to explain. Amber seemed to realize she had overspoken and added another sentence. Oh, sorry, this isn't really a topic for travelers. But since you came from the wilderness, Liyue, I wonder if you have any clues to provide. Ling, the real mysterious phantom thief. Ye's smile froze. Immediately, an idea popped into his head. Let this mysterious thief become an eternal unsolved mystery. He spoke up, regarding that, I might not have any clues to provide. I came from the direction of Kinky Village and just arrived in Mondstadt. As for the Abyss Order you mentioned, I think it's somewhat possible. Liyue apologized in his heart and quickly added, I saw many Abyss mages wandering along the way, seemingly looking for something. And for such a large-scale collection task, wouldn't it be too difficult for a single person without many helpers? Ember's eyes lit up, and she nodded in agreement. You have a point. Perhaps I can mention it to Acting Grand Master Jean. It seems the Knights of Favonius need to be more wary of the Abyss Order's movements. Although I don't know why they need so many flowers, we must be on guard. Having successfully diverted Ember's thoughts, Liyue and Ember finally arrived at the gates of Mondstadt City. Liyue reluctantly pulled his gaze away from the little pigeons at the gate and finally officially stepped into Mondstadt City. Ember enthusiastically took out a wind glider and handed it to Liyue. Take this as a gift for your support. Although I'd love to take you to eat Mondstadt's secret favorite honey roast, I have other work to attend to. Since you're here for tourism, please settle in Mondstadt first, and let's go together next time. Oh right, you should know how to use it, right? Liyue accepted it directly and nodded slightly to Ember. I've seen other adventurers using wind gliders in Fontaine, so I know how to use one. After parting with Ember, Liyue went to the bulletin board. There was no news of the strings of the sky being stolen yet, so there was still time. Immediately, Liyue headed straight for the plaza in front of the cathedral and, as expected, saw the familiar green figure plus a certain blondie who hadn't been seen for a few days. Venti was telling the story of Storm Terror. The light sound of the lyre combined with the moving narrative was completely different from the experience in the game. Even standing on the outermost edge, Liyue could feel the threads of emotion hidden in the music drifting with the wind. This was the real world. Liyue had never felt it so real before. Perhaps, there was a reason he had come here in the dark. As the song ended, the crowd in the plaza dispersed, and Ether approached Venti. Liyue didn't go far either, quietly coming up behind the two. Venti was the first to notice Liyue's presence. So, traveler from Fontaine, do you also have business with me? Chapter 5, Adventurer Liyue makes her entrance. Hello, I am the adventurer Liyue from Fontaine. I am very interested in the story you just told, so I would like to learn more about Dvalin. Venti chuckled, my stories are very precious. If you want to hear more, you can come here next time, but today's performance has already ended. Liyue wasn't surprised by the rejection. After all, judging from the plot, Venti's performance of Dvalin's story here was more about clearing Dvalin's name, and meeting the traveler might also be a part of it. However, Liyue wasn't unprepared. Actually, I have a reason for wanting to learn about Dvalin. I happened to encounter him while adventuring near Dodapa Gorge that day, and it really gave me a fright. But he seemed to be in great pain. I hid in the bushes so he wouldn't find me. I just happened to hear your story today and realized that what I saw was Storm Terror Dvalin, which is why I want to know more. Perhaps you could help me take a look at this. Liyue took out a red crystallize from her backpack. This was exactly what she had obtained from a treasure chest while grinding. Venti's brow furrowed, and a look of heartache appeared on his face. This is a tear shed by Dvalin because of his pain. Paimon immediately looked at Ether. Don't we have one too? Ether took another crystallize out of his backpack. But at this moment, the crystallize had turned from red to completely clear. The crystallize has been purified? When did that happen? Paimon asked in disbelief. However, Venti also quickly noticed that the toxins inside the teardrop had been completely purified. And the one Liyue took out also quickly turned into a clear color. Venti then had a new idea and took a red crystallize from his own backpack to give to the traveler. Sure enough, it was also quickly purified. Venti looked at Ether, his eyes filled with expectation. You truly possess an incredible power. A person like you is destined to be featured in the poems sung by bards. Standing in the light, you will surely become a hero. Standing in the shadows, you could also guide calamity. What about me, what about me? Can I be part of the poems too? Liyue interjected from the side. Having her great adventure stories sung about was an adventurer's ultimate dream. Venti smiled slightly at Liyue, but then looked a bit uneasy. Naturally, but I don't have time to compose new songs for you right now. Even if Dvalin isn't hunted down, his life force will rapidly fade, he will burn himself out in his rage. Is there anything we can do to help? Liyue took on the quest for the traveler with a sense of familiarity. Well, I have my own plan. I won't trouble you too for now. Paimon asked curiously, what is your plan? But Venti didn't intend to answer, instead turning to leave. Then I shall take my leave first. Hey! Where are you going? To the symbol of Mondstadt's heroes. Goodbye, you two. Venti quickly disappeared from the plaza. Ether turned his gaze toward the elegant Fontaine adventurer beside him. Although she didn't look like the type who was good at fighting, since she dared to go to Dodapa Gorge alone and could obtain Dvalin's teardrop, she wouldn't be an ordinary person. Perhaps he could get to know her. After all, Liyue came from Fontaine, and she might have news of his sister. Hello, I am the traveler Ether. Have you seen a girl who looks very similar to me? Liyue didn't show it on her face, but her heart was cheering. Wow, I heard the mute speak. Liyue cleared her throat and said, I'm sorry, I just arrived in Mondstadt as well and haven't seen a girl who looks like you. If you're looking for someone, it might be more effective to go to the Knights of Favonius. Ether hadn't expected much anyway, so he could only thank her and leave. Liyue also waved goodbye. After all, there were still many things to finish. For this side, she would just establish some familiarity first and then go to the tavern to wait for people. As for now, rooftops, city walls, windmills, treasure chests, here I come. Of course, the first step was to climb to the top of the Mondstadt Knights of Favonius headquarters to activate the waypoints. Arriving behind the Knights of Favonius, Liyue began to scramble up the wall. However, this action was easy in the game, but in reality, climbing seemed exceptionally difficult. No wonder those characters start panting halfway through. Liyue already regretted choosing such a large hem just to wear a beautiful dress. Perhaps when she went down later, she could follow the local customs and choose a more capable Mondstadt outfit. Finally halfway up, Liyue could only choose to stand on a windowsill temporarily to recover her stamina. However, this wasn't the game world. As soon as Liyue looked down, she made eye contact with Kaya inside the glass window. Oh, I'm doomed. Kaya also looked out the window at the woman in the fontaine dress with some curiosity. Excuse me, do you need help? Liyue pursed her lips, and in the end, she was too embarrassed to say a word. She couldn't continue climbing, nor could she stop. After weighing the options between activating the waypoints and being embarrassed for a long time, the hardcore player undoubtedly chose the former. Finally, Liyue steeled her resolve and leaped straight to the roof in one breath, successfully activating the waypoints. But as soon as she turned around, she saw Kaya watching her with an amused expression, clearly having just walked up the stairs. Liyue awkwardly rubbed the back of her head. I can explain. Oh? Then please, great adventurer from Fontaine, explain your reasoning. Liyue's brain CPU was running at its limit, but unfortunately, she couldn't think of a perfect reason. I wanted to try out the wind glider, so I climbed up. You know, I'm an adventurer, so I want to try more exciting things. I met a Mondstadt adventurer in Fontaine before who could actually jump down from above the harbor. I was very envious at the time, so I thought I'd come and try it too. I felt that the top of the Knights of Favonius would be very suitable for takeoff, so that's why I wanted to climb up. I'm really sorry. After speaking, Liyue even bowed and squeezed out a couple of tears, attempting to muddle through. Although Liyue also knew it was highly unlikely given Kaya's intelligence, she could only pray that Kaya would be willing to turn a blind eye and let her go. Sure enough, in these turbulent times, Kaya wouldn't make things difficult for Liyue. Even if Liyue really had some ulterior motive, someone who dared to climb the Knights of Favonius headquarters in broad daylight probably wasn't a child with bad intentions. Kaya naturally accepted Liyue's excuse. Oh? That truly is a wonderful idea. But this is the Knights of Favonius headquarters after all. Such behavior in Fontaine would be no different from climbing the Opera House Epic Lace. I hope you can recognize your mistake, ma'am. And of course, there's one more important thing, do you have a gliding license? Chapter 6, could this not be on purpose? A gliding license? Liyue seemed to fall into some painful memory for a moment, but quickly calmed down again. This isn't a game, it's not like an accelerating wind current could just appear out of thin air, right? So Liyue prepared to continue playing dumb. What license? Sorry, it's my first time in Mondstadt, and I don't know the local laws. Fortunately, Kaya didn't seem to intend to press the matter. Instead, he enthusiastically began introducing the various requirements for obtaining a license to Liyue. And he seemed to have the intention of personally proctoring the exam. Kaya crossed his arms and looked at Liyue. Well then, adventurer Liyue, are the above points clear to you? I happen to be free right now, so why don't we go give it a try? Seeing that Kaya probably wouldn't let her go until he had thoroughly investigated her background, Liyue could only give a bitter smile. Then let's do it now. Liyue could only follow Kaya out of the knight's headquarters, but as soon as they went downstairs, they saw acting Grand Master Jean, who had just returned from outside. Master Jean also immediately noticed this lady who seemed a bit disheveled. And this is... Kaya eagerly recounted what had just happened. As he spoke, Liyue felt like the corners of his mouth were about to fly off. Is it really that funny? Liyue suppressed her emotions and gave Master Jean an apologetic smile. I'm truly sorry. I've deeply realized my mistake, reflected seriously, and I promise never to do it again yet, right? With the waypoint on top of the knight's building, wouldn't she have to go there 3 times a day in the future? Of course, Master Jean wouldn't blame a friend from a foreign land. She simply instructed Kaya to host her well before turning back to her office. The calamity brought by Storm Terror was far from over. Meanwhile, Liyue obediently followed Kaya to the heights of the cathedral. This place was indeed very familiar. Kaya stood beside Liyue and pointed in a direction. The destination is over there. If you can catch up with me, you'll pass the exam. Of course, I won't fly too fast. Let's begin now. Liyue choked for a moment. Was this really not intentional? Would you bet that the previous gliding license exams were like this? If she hadn't restarted 10 times in the game, she might have actually believed him. Kaya didn't seem to give Liyue time to react. He jumped straight down and headed toward the Mondstadt city gates. By the time Liyue reacted, he had already run past the statue of the 7. This is what he meant by waiting for me? No sportsmanship at all, hey. Liyue also turned and jumped down, popping a stamina potion into her mouth. Running at full speed the whole way, how could she be slower than him? But Kaya seemed to have some strange magic, always managing to stay one step ahead of Liyue. I remember Kaya's talents shouldn't include a speed boost. For a split second, Liyue really wanted to use a waypoint to teleport and give someone a surprise. But now wasn't the time to be impulsive. Sure enough, Dozens of seconds later, Liyue arrived at the city gate just one step behind Kaya. Huff, huff. Is this the advantage of having long legs? Kaya turned to look at Liyue and spoke with some regret. It seems adventurer Liyue can't get her gliding license for now. But please don't be discouraged, maybe after a couple more tries, you will become more proficient. Liyue swallowed the words that would have been censored and put on a pitiful expression. Well, it is my first time using it after all. I'm sure our cavalry captain can give me another chance, right? The smile on Kaya's face didn't fade as he readily agreed. Of course. But, can I choose the location this time? After all, I'm not familiar with Mondstadt. I almost bumped into a pedestrian just now. Why don't we go to the wilderness? On my way to Mondstadt, I happened to pass by a high mountain that would definitely be perfect for a gliding license exam. Kaya thought for a moment, his face showing concern. If it were before, I would certainly agree. But the wilderness is very chaotic right now. If we encounter a hilly churl attack on the way, it would be very dangerous. Liyue waved her hand. There's no need for Captain Kaya to worry about that. I'm not some defenseless ordinary person, I'm a vision wielder. After saying this, she took out a pre-prepared hydro glass orb from her pocket, intentionally waved it in front of Kaya, and then quickly put it back. Oh, that's wonderful then. Let's head out. Kaya's gaze lingered on the vision for a moment before he agreed to Liyue's request. But Liyue felt inexplicably guilty. He didn't see through it, did he? Liyue forced a smile and led the way, with Kaya following just half a step behind her, making her a bit nervous. She didn't even have the heart to pick the sweet flowers and mint she encountered along the way. Fortunately, the hilly churls along this path had mostly been cleared by Liyue earlier. There were no blind whopper flowers popping out of the ground trying to slap her, nor any grass slimes lying in ambush to give her a forceful nudge from behind. Liyue finally reached her familiar destination. The cliff over by Windrise. Kaya clapped his hands and looked at Liyue. So it's here? Adventurer Liyue certainly knows how to choose a spot. I suspect you're being sarcastic, but I have no proof. I'll endure. So, what are we competing in this round? Liyue pointed toward the statue under the great tree in Windrise. How about we see who touches the statue of the seven first? Kaya naturally wouldn't refuse. He and Liyue leaped from the cliff simultaneously. However, having taken a stamina potion, Liyue's gliding speed was naturally faster than Kaya's, and the gap between them gradually widened. Last time, because of the terrain, Liyue had to run half the way and fly the other half, which led to her unfortunate loss to Kaya. But in this large open area, straight gliding was naturally faster for Liyue. Unsurprisingly, Liyue landed first. Liyue turned around confidently. Sure enough, Kaya was still in midair and hadn't descended yet, but Liyue didn't find any displeasure on his face. After Kaya landed, he actually started clapping for Liyue. It seems our marvelous great adventurer has quite a lot of experience with flying, even your gliding speed is faster than average. I'm truly impressed this time. Liyue. You're the real expert at playing dumb. But Liyue didn't intend to say anything more and continued to play along. Then where is my gliding license? Kaya smoothly pulled a brand new license from his pocket. Her name was already thoughtfully written on it, and it was even stamped. Liyue instantly felt like a bit of a clown, her heart so gloomy she was about to go emo. As for Kaya, unless absolutely necessary, she'd better avoid him in the future. This license was clearly prepared long ago. So, if he had planned to give it to me from the start, what was that performance at the city gate all about? Even for a test, this is going too far. Liyue's mask of elegance was nearly crumbling, but she persisted in playing dumb to the end. She stepped forward, quickly took the license from Kaya's hand, and tucked it into her backpack. Then I won't disturb Captain Kaya any further. Goodbye. And hopefully never again. With that, she turned and ran, looking rather sheepish as she fled. Chapter 7, Master Diluc, please board the pirate ship. Liyue ran far away quickly, looking back to see that Kaya indeed hadn't followed, and finally let out a long sigh of relief. Shrewd people are indeed best left unprovoked. Looking at the sky, it seemed night was approaching, so Liyue used the waypoints to leave directly. If she ran into Kaya halfway again, she would be depressed to death. Emerging from the waypoint, she came face to face with two Fatui members. Although they weren't looking at Liyue, she felt they were standing there for more than just observing the crowd coming and going through the city gate. Perhaps the waypoints were also objects of their surveillance. Liyue felt she might need to be more cautious in the future. Although this waypoint was convenient, it would be safer to walk from outside the city. Taking advantage of the night and before catching the attention of the two, Liyue turned down the stairs and took a detour through the side gate to the tavern. Today was the opening of the big show, and she couldn't miss it. Pushing open the door, Master Diluc was indeed at the bar, along with Charles the bartender. Liyue's eyes lingered on the dandelion wine behind the bar, but it was clear Master Diluc did not think Liyue was of age. Apple juice or... Before he could finish, the tavern door opened again, and a breathless Ether and Venti burst in through the entrance. Boss, we want a place that's a bit more hidden. Diluc didn't ask much, simply gesturing for the two to go up to the second floor. Liyue took the opportunity to greet Ether and was then brought upstairs with them. The tavern was nearly empty late at night. Liyue looked at the two curiously and asked in a low voice, did something happen? Venti didn't answer directly, but instead asked back, so why is the greatest adventurer, Miss Liyue, here at this hour? Liyue put on a helpless expression and slowly explained, don't even mention it. I went to the wild with Captain Kaya today for a flying license exam. It was already late by the time we got back to Mondstadt, so I thought I'd come to Mondstadt to experience what dandelion wine is like. Who knew they only provide apple juice to minors here? The Knights of Favonius soon arrived downstairs, so the group had to pause their catching up. They watched as Master Diluc bluffed the knights away before heading back downstairs. However, Venti's eyes couldn't help but keep drifting toward the wine bottles behind the bar. In the gap while Liyue and Ether were coming down from upstairs, Venti had already quietly slipped behind the bar and swiped a bottle of wine. Put down the wine you snatched from behind the bar. You don't look old enough to drink. However, Venti chose to play dumb as usual, only gripping the wine bottle in his hand tighter, with no intention of obediently putting it back. Liyue quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Boss, I'll pay for this bottle for him. And I can testify, Venti the Great Bard is actually of age. After saying this, Liyue winked at Venti. Since there was wine to drink, Venti naturally nodded along with Liyue's words, finally making Master Diluc relent. Venti looked at Diluc and introduced him to Ether first. This must be Master Diluc, the big boss behind this bartender boss. He's very famous. By the way, I really like the dandelion wine his establishment produces. After speaking, he even shook the wine bottle in his hand, then showed a look of regret. Although most of the time I can only afford the bulk stuff, I still have to thank the great adventurer Liyue. Diluc looked at the three of them, standing near the door to block their path, and then asked, I just heard about the thief from the guards. Let me clarify, you actually dared to steal the strings of the sky. I admire that. Even if you're fools rarely seen in 1,000 years. Paimon couldn't hold back anymore and shouted loudly, we didn't steal it. The real culprit is someone else. Venti also added from the side, this one here is the popular newcomer of the knights. How could he possibly steal a holy relic? Hearing this, Liyue rolled her eyes at Venti in her heart. Wasn't it you who made him steal it? Hearing Venti's words, Diluc also realized, as that blonde hair was indeed very conspicuous. The popular newcomer. Ah, so it's you. Diluc naturally didn't think someone who could become the popular newcomer of the knights would be a bad person, so he was worth trusting. But this bard was truly suspicious, and it seemed this poet had just let Ether inside, so he naturally had to ask about their relationship. So he asked Ether again, what, are you and that bard acquaintances? There was no need for secrecy, so Ether answered truthfully, just a relationship of having heard one performance. Diluc grew more suspicious, but he also expressed approval of Ether's actions. As a traveler, yet willing to lend a helping hand to Mondstadt in its time of peril. It's a pity for such a person to join the knights. The Knights of Favonius have been hesitant and inefficient regarding the storm terror issue, and diplomatically, they are weak and conservative toward the Fatui. Well, forget it, I don't want to mention this topic further. I have a different opinion. Liyue interrupted Diluc's speech and said, as an adventurer newly arrived in Mondstadt, whether in the wild or in the city, I've received help and support from members of the Knights of Favonius. Any unstable elements are eliminated by the knights. For example, Amber she cleared the hilly churl camps on the outskirts. Captain Kaya also monitors the city's movements at all times to ensure no citizens are injured. As for acting Grand Master Jean, she handles things personally and is a qualified, good leader. As for the storm terror Dvalin, I don't know if Master Diluc is aware, but Dvalin was actually one of the four wines. Even considering Dvalin's past merits in protecting Mondstadt, the knights couldn't possibly take action against him. Moreover, everyone knows the reputation of the Fatui. By preventing the Fatui from interfering, the knights have already done a lot of work. Ether looked at this miraculous lady adventurer. Combining his own observations over the past few days, he also strongly agreed with Liyue's words and nodded. Diluc didn't argue either, only saying, I have my own expectations for the city of Mondstadt. Now, answer my question, why did you steal the strings of the sky? Venti spread his hands slightly. Seeing that Diluc seemed to have a strong prejudice against the knights, he asked one more question, do you really want to know? It might involve trouble related to the knights. Diluc gave a self-deprecating laugh. I'm not afraid of trouble. I am trouble for the knights. Venti was naturally happy to see this. Another person's help might mean another chance for a turnaround. Then, if I perform the true story, will you believe me? Depending on the situation, I will make a judgment. Master Diluc had always been very confident. Then, will you pay me the performance fee? Liyue truly felt the urge to face palm. Still wanting to score another bottle at a time like this, what can I say, truly worthy of the Enmo Archon. However, Diluc was also gracious enough to pick up the thread. The reward ranges from 5 mora to the strings of the sky, depending on your story. Having received a definite guarantee, Venti smiled slightly and said, very well, then I shall add one more performance. Great, I have to listen to it all over again, Liyue complained in her heart. Chapter 8, An Explosion of Acting Skills. Venti's story was as enchanting as ever. Diluc, of course, didn't listen to it as just an ordinary story. In the end, he realized that this was actually history that had truly happened. Meanwhile, Liyue was already yawning incessantly. After all, the time for stealing the lyre was the middle of the night, and on top of that, she had been grinding the map for 5 days straight. At this moment, her eyelids were already drooping. Even Paimon, standing to the side, looked like he wanted to come over and hold up Liyue's head at any moment. Out of necessity, Liyue went to the bartender and ordered an iced apple juice, finally managing to find some energy. And Diluc finally found his answer within the poetry, the narrative poem just now, that is an important secret. Why let me know all this? Why indeed? Venti spoke in riddles again. Perhaps because the direction of the wind is changing. What do you think, Master Diluc? Diluc instantly had a plan and gave the subsequent arrangements. Interesting. Give me some time, and I can act as a liaison. He then said to Ether, Outlander, it seems you haven't come under suspicion because of your status with the Knights of Favonius. The description on the wanted poster only mentions blonde hair, so the guards shouldn't come looking for you. But as for you, Bard, you'd better not leave the tavern. Hearing this, the smile on Venti's face grew even wider as he replied, no problem. I love taverns. Finally, Diluc turned his gaze toward Ling Yi. As for this young lady, I don't think such a dangerous matter is suitable for an adventurer visiting Mondstadt for tourism. Perhaps you could choose to go rest first. Ling Yi finally heard herself being addressed and suddenly perked up. Don't be so cold-hearted. I came to Mondstadt specifically to become a great adventurer. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I won't let it go easily. Besides, even if it's just for Port Valen, I'll contribute my part. And don't look down on me. I'm an adventurer who has flattened dragon spine above, traversed the mausoleum of King Deshret and Simura below, and reached the deep underwater caves of Fontaine. The knowledge I possess is very useful. Diluc looked at Ling Yi's small frame and couldn't believe it no matter how he looked at her. He questioned, oh? Is that so? Such a powerful adventurer, yet I don't seem to have heard of you. Feeling a bit indignant, Ling Yi stood up and stared sharply at Diluc. I'm a rookie adventurer. It's normal not to have heard of me. I believe my name will spread across the continent of Teyvat in the future. But if you don't believe me, you can test me. When she said this, not only Diluc, but even Ether and Venti took an extra look at this misadventurer before them. Venti also seemed to be getting interested in Ling Yi. It seems Miss Ling Yi is someone whose appearance is deceptive. I wonder if Miss Ling Yi has any research on the chasm. Ling Yi couldn't help but take a few more looks at Venti, momentarily unsure how to answer. Well, does having mind there count? Now even Diluc had to start paying attention to Ling Yi, asking again, but I heard the Black Cliff Forge over there stopped operations long ago. Ling Yi didn't panic at all, raising her head slightly with a bit of pride. It's just some archaic stones I gathered on the surrounding mountains. Saying this, she took an archaic stone out of her backpack. This was something she had gathered in passing while unlocking the statues of the Seven. After all, there was a mining quest back then, and those archaic stones were located far away. Ling Yi had the habit of preparing quest items in advance. Venti let out a cry of surprise. Oh. It really is an archaic stone produced from the chasm. Looking at this quality, it must have been obtained from a very difficult to reach place, right? It was just so it only took me half an hour to climb up. However, Ling Yi didn't intend to continue this topic. After all, the more she said, the more mistakes she might make. She only needed to prove she had the ability to participate in this incident. It's nothing, it's nothing. I think Master Venti is the one who's truly amazing. To be able to sing such ancient ballads, you must have quite a background too, right? Venti chuckled. I'm just Mondstadt's best bard for 3 consecutive terms, that's all. Miss Adventurer is still more impressive. Seeing that these two were about to praise each other to the heavens, Diluc had to speak up to stop them. Fine. Since Miss Ling Yi insists on participating, then please meet here again tomorrow morning. After all, you look very exhausted, Miss. Ling Yi really almost lost it this time. If I hadn't played the game and known you guys were planning to meet again after the tavern closed, I really would have left. Fine, even this can be a trick against me. Of the 5 people, 4 can participate, and I am not one of them. Ling Yi didn't expose them either. She turned around and scanned everyone with her gaze. Then it's a promise. Whoever goes back on their word is a puppy. After saying that, she stepped out of the tavern. As if she had truly believed them, she walked toward the inn. Only when Ling Yi was completely out of sight did Paimon heave a long sigh of relief. Oh, why did you guys lie to Miss Ling Yi? I think Miss Ling Yi really wanted to help. Diluc didn't say much, only stating, my intelligence network tells me that this woman likely isn't just a simple adventurer. I cannot fully trust her. Venti added, actually, this matter is dangerous after all. I certainly recognize Miss Ling Yi's adventurous spirit, but it's still better if as few people as possible know about this. Paimon watched the two of them go back and forth. Although he still didn't quite understand why, he obediently agreed with their opinions. Then, after the tavern closes tonight, we shall meet here again. On the other side, Ling Yi obediently went to the inn to stay and fell into a peaceful sleep. Hehe, even though I didn't go in person, I know your conversation perfectly well. I can even memorize the plot dialogue. So, as long as I intercept you at the cliff in the end, you won't be able to run away even if you want to. Finally, I can get a good night's sleep. Time flew by, and sunlight soon shone into Ling Yi's room. Ling Yi stretched and slowly went downstairs to the Good Hunter restaurant to munch on breakfast. What should I eat? For a moment, Ling Yi felt her indecisiveness acting up. Having grown accustomed to buns and dumplings, it was a bit difficult to choose from Mondstadt's flavors all of a sudden. It wasn't good to eat too much greasy food early in the morning, so Ling Yi ended up only ordering a recipe for fisherman's toast. When she entered the city, Ling Yi had already bought the recipes for Sweet Madam and Teyvat fried egg, and then went to the nearby shop to buy the appropriate ingredients. But when it actually came time to eat, Liyue still felt she needed to come up with some backup plans. Besides the condition of buffs, perhaps more attention should be paid to the taste as well. After finishing the delicious fisherman's toast, Liyue finally sauntered leisurely to the tavern entrance. As expected, Liyue only received a letter of dismissal from Dailuk. Liyue opened the letter. The words on it were written with sincere concern, saying things like it's for your own good, but in short, not a single sentence was to the point, nor did it reveal any subsequent actions. At the end, it even added a line welcoming her to come drink apple juice for free. This was definitely in Master Dailuk's filthy rich style. However, Liyue had already prepared. Putting on a grand performance of acting, she stomped her feet at the tavern entrance before leaving indignantly, not even taking the free apple juice. I wonder how many points Master Dailuk would give my acting skills. Chapter 9, A Wonderful Misunderstanding. High up on the snowy mountain, Liyue was diligently tilling the earth. The challenges that were once impossible and the tasks that required the use of a bow and arrow could now be easily completed. Indeed, Liyue had somehow learned how to use a bow and arrow. He carried a LV.1 claymore on his back for mining, held a recurve bow in his right hand, and had a catalyst floating to his left. Although he might not be as accurate as in a game, being able to use multiple weapons at once made Liyue feel like a fish in water. If he couldn't take you down head-on, he could always shoot some arrows from the shadows. After climbing halfway up the mountain, Liyue saw the hilly Churl King sitting by a stone tablet. Just as he was about to draw his bow, he noticed a young man with blonde hair nearby. Albedo? It couldn't be Abe, could it? Having finished the snow mountain event, Liyue had some doubts. It couldn't be Huabe Duo, could it? To be cautious, Liyue put away his weapons and hid behind a nearby rock to see what would happen. However, it was clear that Liyue was overthinking. Sucrose appeared from behind, holding a potion and a very robust sweet flower, obviously in the middle of an experiment. Liyue thought for a moment and decided not to reveal himself for now. After all, his identity made him quite suitable to be experimental material, and he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly anyway. But Liyue had clearly overestimated himself. Although his steps were light, Albedo still heard the noise. Is there someone behind the rock? Do you need something? Albedo asked. Sucrose also looked in Liyue's direction following Albedo's voice but didn't see anything and looked at Albedo with some confusion. With no other choice, Liyue sighed and revealed himself, smiling sweetly at the two. Hello, I am Liyue, an adventurer exploring the snowy mountain. I happened to pass by and saw you conducting alchemy experiments. I didn't want to disturb you, so I hid. Sucrose was a bit shy but still greeted him warmly. Albedo also nodded politely and then asked, Are you alone? The snowy mountain is very dangerous, it's better to travel in a group. Liyue couldn't explain his appearance with a catalyst in his left hand and a bow in his right. Normally, he would avoid people when out in the wild, otherwise, he wouldn't have gained the title of a great thief. He had considered teaming up, but there were very few who could keep up with him. The Benny Adventure team was good, with healers and damage boosters, but Liyue didn't want to find a chest full of cabbage after all his hard work. As for the members of the Knights of Favonius, that was even more impossible. And those prominent figures, oh no, those cunning people, were even less likely to act together, so Liyue really had no choice. Liyue could only continue to maintain his title as a great adventurer and said that the snowy mountain was a piece of cake. Although the snowy mountain is indeed dangerous, it is not difficult for me. Oh. Since you are an adventurer, can you accept a commission from me? Liyue looked at the sudden exclamation mark and his heart raced. He looked at Albedo with eager eyes. After all, this was his first task since coming here. Of course. Seeing Liyue agree so readily, Sucrose curiously asked, Don't you want to know what the commission is? Liyue patted his chest and assured them, Trust me, I will be the most capable adventurer you have ever seen. This is the lifelong pursuit of the great adventurer Liyue. Albedo thought for a moment and then stated his commission, I was going to ask you to help collect some mint from the depths of the snowy mountain as material. Since that's the case, how about you also draw a map of the related materials? The more complete and the more items, the higher the price I will pay. Liyue nodded and said, Just mint. I've seen many other plants and ores along the way that can be drawn on the map. Of course. With Albedo's permission, Liyue waved goodbye to the two, a satisfied smile on his face. After all, he had just opened his task bar, and this major task, or rather, event task, had a reward of up to 160 primo gems. This would drive any player crazy, let alone a hardcore player like Liyue. And for someone like Liyue, who had already fully explored the snowy mountain, there was nothing to fear. He was the living guide. Not to mention mint and sweet flowers, he knew every deep crimson stone in the snowy mountain like the back of his hand. So now the main task was to activate the Skyfrost nail. With a bow in hand and a wind glider at the ready, these two essential items were prepared. Today, he would unlock it. Meanwhile, Ether and Paimon had just arrived at the snowy mountains camp. Yuxia was diligently introducing the snowy mountains situation to the traveler, but Paimon seemed a bit distracted. Traveler, do you think we were too harsh last night? Ether also nodded. Liyue didn't seem like a bad person, and he had just joined the Adventurers Guild and inquired about Liyue's situation. Catherine praised Liyue, saying that almost half of Mondstadt's tasks had been completed by him. Whether it was helping with deliveries or clearing hilly Churl camps, from acceptance to completion, it took only 10 minutes. There was even a rumor of a strange delivery god title. Even the nuns of the church praised Liyue. From the knights to the children on the street, almost everyone had received Ling Yi's help. And just as he said last night, Ling Yi was almost omnipotent. Whether it was finding cats or finding medicinal herbs, he could do it easily. There was nothing he couldn't accomplish. It was said that people were starting to line up to ask for his help. Ether also asked Catherine about Ling Yi's whereabouts and found out that he had come to the snowy mountain, which was why Ether had come here. This place is really dangerous, traveler. Do you think Ling Yi came here to adventure because he was angry with us? Paimon asked. Ether shook his head. Since Ling Yi mentioned the snowy mountain last night, he must have been here before. We don't need to worry too much, but I'm afraid Ling Yi knows something and that's why he came here. Is there something in the snowy mountain? Paimon asked, looking at Ether in confusion. The traveler opened the book Lisa gave him, which described the battle between Dvalin and the poison dragon, ending with the poison dragon's death in the snowy mountain. Paimon's eyes widened. Ah, could it be that Ling Yi decided to investigate the source of Dvalin's poisonous blood alone, and that's why he went to the snowy mountain? That thing must be very dangerous. Even a creature as large as Dvalin was tormented by the poisonous blood. Will Ling Yi be okay? Paimon exclaimed. Ether nodded, expressing his concern, and then packed his things to prepare supplies. We have to find Ling Yi, Ether said. Meanwhile, Ling Yi, unaware of all this, continued to till the earth. Chapter 10, I'll be taking that. Just crossed this mountain, and reached another river. Ling Yi hummed a little tune, taking down one hilly churl with every arrow. Ding! Another common treasure chest popped up. Ling Yi opened it and stuffed everything into her backpack without even looking. She lowered her head to check her map coordinates. It seemed the periphery of Starglow Cavern had been fully explored. Ling Yi officially stepped into the interior of the cavern. Upon entering the cave, Ling Yi headed straight for the bottom. As expected, that challenge known as a nightmare for newbies was lying quietly at the base. After finding 3 Sealy, Ling Yi smiled slightly. I couldn't do anything to you in the game, but now that I've come to the continent of Teyvat, am I not allowed to use a few cheats? Torches? I'll be taking those. Ling Yi pulled out 3 fire pillars she had stolen from a Fachui camp and placed them at the 3 corners of the lakeside. Borrowing some fire from the hilly churls above, she successfully set up 3 torches near the challenge. Done. With Sucrose's Q, no Cryo Abyss Mage can withstand this. She clicked to start the challenge. The Cryo Hilly Churl shooters were dumbfounded as soon as they appeared. Why had it suddenly become so warm here? Yay! One hilly churl happened to be standing right on a torch and started howling from the heat. Ling Yi took the opportunity to use her E, tossing several hilly churls onto the torches together while quickly firing follow-up arrows from a distance. Headshot. A critical hit on the weak point. Even though it was just physical DMG, the crit DMG was quite high. Shielding herself, Ling Yi stepped forward quickly, snatched a hilly churl's bow and arrow, and kicked it into the water for good measure. Cryo arrows? I'll be taking those. Let me teach you how to play permafrost. Using the cryo element that hadn't yet dissipated from the arrowheads, several ice sculptures instantly appeared in the water. She used another E, and accompanied by the intense pyro element, the hilly churls melted instantly. Using the same trick again, Ling Yi cleared another wave. Yay! A cryo churl appeared, but Ling Yi was already standing behind it. Sucrose's E. The hilly churls were blown into the air, losing control. Amidst the chaos, Ling Yi remained calm, reaching out her hand. Hilly churl staff? I'll be taking that. The churl, now staffless, scrambled up from the ground in a daze. It prepared to create a high platform only to realize something was missing. It stood frozen in place before being kicked into the water by Ling Yi. Frozen, then melted. Though no big numbers popped up, the hilly churl indeed melted away. At this moment, 2 minutes still remained. Ling Yi confidently approached the final corner, where 3 cryo abyss mages were dancing and flailing about. Positioning. Ling Yi stood in the predetermined spot, waiting for the abyss mages to walk into her trap. As expected, if the distance is too great, the abyss mages choose to teleport a few meters in front of the player. This was the grave Ling Yi had chosen for the 3 of them. As the abyss mages reached the intended position, Ling Yi dropped Sucrose's Q directly. Every second, their shields decreased at a visible rate. In less than 3 seconds, the abyss mages found themselves on the ground, with the scorching heat from the nearby torches closing in. Aya! Ling Yi quickly put the 3 of them out of their misery. Challenge successful. She went to the familiar spot to pick up a scarlet quartz, and the seal was quickly broken. Ling Yi didn't linger. She climbed the stairs and headed straight for her destination, the Skyfrost Nail. Meanwhile, Paimon pointed at an object flying rapidly upward in the distance and cried out, "Traveler, look! Something is flying to the top." Ether also looked up. Judging by the position, it flew out from inside the snowy mountain. Perhaps that's where Ling Yi is. Paimon nodded and pointed in a direction. I know we can enter from here. Let's hurry. Thus, Ling Yi had only climbed halfway when she heard someone calling her from below. Listening closely, it was Paimon's cute voice. "Adventurer Ling Yi, are you there?" Ling Yi thought for a moment. Bringing the traveler along might make things twice as efficient. Moreover, establishing her presence in front of the protagonist was a necessity. So, Ling Yi quickly gave a response. Ling Yi leapt directly from the heights, deploying her wind glider at the critical limit of 5 meters above the ground, landing right in front of Ether. "Little Paimon, don't shout inside the snowy mountain, or you'll cause an avalanche." Paimon hurriedly covered her mouth, looking left and right. Only after seeing no sign of an avalanche did she breathe a sigh of relief. Sorry. If something really went wrong, I'd feel so bad for you. Liyue chuckled. It's fine. Even if there's an avalanche, I can get you out. Don't forget, I'm the greatest adventurer. Ether felt a bit embarrassed. Paimon had flown too fast for him to stop her from shouting. Now that they'd caught up, it was awkward and he didn't know what to say. Even if he wanted to persuade her to go back, he needed a reason. However, he still stood before Liyue and insisted, Liyue, you came here to investigate the matter of the venomous dragon, right? Please don't mind what happened last night. I think Diluc only kept you out of it for your safety. Please don't put yourself in danger. Looking at Ether's serious expression, Liyue suddenly felt like laughing. It turned out sincerity really was the ultimate move, even she felt like obediently following the traveler back to Mondstadt. No wonder he's called Cutie. But after thinking it over, Liyue didn't actually mind being misunderstood as investigating the venomous dragon Duran. Perhaps she could use this chance to pull the traveler along up the mountain. In that case, let's go together. Paimon waved her hands. No, we're here to persuade you to leave the mountain. Liyue put on a look of great regret. But I've already found some clues. They might actually be useful for saving Dvalin. And traveler, you have the power of purification, don't you? Why not give it a try? With me, the great adventurer, plus the mysterious traveler, we can complete any mission. Liyue's eyes sparkled as she looked at the traveler, her expectant look quite enticing. Ether indeed found it hard to refuse. Simply persuading someone to leave was easy, but now that clues had been found, it would be a great help to their operation. Moreover, Liyue's words were very logical. Neither of them was weak, so there was really no reason not to proceed. If that's the case, let's move forward together. That commotion just now wasn't small, it seems Miss Liyue already knows what to do next. Ether gestured for Liyue to lead the way. Liyue didn't stand on ceremony. She turned and led Ether further up, explaining things to watch out for as they walked. On this snowy mountain lies a shattered skyfrost nail, and what was frozen just now were its fragments. I've checked relevant historical records and speculate that it was this nail falling from the sky that neutralized the pollution after the venomous dragon's death. So I think, perhaps restoring it will provide a way to purify the toxins. Picking up an anemograna, they moved across the smooth ice. As the wind current slowly opened, bright light gradually filtered through from above. The skyfrost nail they had finally arrived. Chapter 11, Adventuring. Paimon looked at the pillar frozen by a massive ice block and exclaimed in amazement, seemingly having endless questions, what is this huge thing? Liyue says it's a nail? What kind of nail can be so big? And who would leave such a big nail here? Why can it suppress the corruption? Liyue waved his hand to indicate he didn't know either, most of what I know is speculation. Perhaps there is more information up this snowy mountain. Let's search separately. Ether nodded in agreement with Liyue and immediately began looking for a way up from the left. Liyue, on the other hand, started from the right, heading straight for the answer. He first activated the waypoint and then made his way towards the high crimson agate. The ruin guard quickly detected the enemy and slowly rose from the ground. Ether heard the noise and was about to call out a warning, but saw Liyue directly shoot 2 arrows at the ruin guard's energy core before it could fully stand up. The ruin guard hadn't even stood up before it was forced to sit back down. This time, with no chance to stand and prevent the attack, Liyue scoffed at the ruin guard. Turning around, Liyue saw that Ether, who had run halfway, had retreated. Even Paimon couldn't help but admit, how should I put it? Liyue is truly a great adventurer. Very reliable. Liyue waved to Ether and said, come on up, I've found the way. Picking up the crimson agate from the ground, Liyue turned and shot an arrow towards the high skyfrost nail. The arrow, wrapped in red energy, steadily flew towards the distant ice block. Even ice that had been frozen for thousands of years would melt instantly, revealing the core inside. Paimon watched the ice block melt smoothly in the distance, his eyes sparkling as he looked at Liyue, so that's how you solve it. There are 2 more up there. Traveler, let's give it a try too. Liyue nodded to Ether, and the 2 walked side by side towards the small path. Paimon flew behind them, curiously looking around, but also noticed something. He hadn't seen Liyue's vision and asked, by the way, what element is Liyue's vision? Is it pyro? After all, Liyue can adventure in a place like this snowy mountain, so she must not be afraid of the cold, right? Liyue took out a fake glass ball and showed it to Paimon before quickly putting it back in his pocket. Wrong guess. I'm hydro. Liyue was truly afraid that if Paimon looked any longer, he would be exposed. Fortunately, Paimon didn't mind and was focused on the hydro element. Hydro? I guessed wrong. But Liyue, why don't you wear your vision openly? Why do you keep it in your pocket? Liyue had already prepared an excuse and put on a pained expression, saying slowly, you see, little Paimon, you should know that a vision is something only a few people can have. The reason I don't wear it is because of an incident that happened once. At the time, I was on an adventure and happened to meet a few reckless adventurers. They not only lost their food and equipment but also got injured. In the end, they pushed me to face the dangerous magical beasts alone and forced me to find food and treasures for them. If I didn't comply, they would criticize me. Since then, I haven't worn my vision openly. A vision might be a gift from the heavens, but it could also be an unsolvable poison. Paimon listened and stomped his foot in anger, those people are too much. Where did Liyue meet those jerks? I want to expose them. Yes. And let Ether give them a good beating. Ling Yi was amused by little Paimon and waved his hand, leaning in to whisper eerily in Paimon's ear, that won't be necessary, because in the end, besides me, none of them made it back alive. Paimon suddenly froze. Ether gave Ling Yi a helpless look, please don't scare Paimon. Ling Yi quickly apologized, but it wasn't very sincere, still immersed in the atmosphere of telling a scary story. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Actually, there's no complicated reason. I just want to train my body more. Relying too much on the vision will eventually turn me into someone who can't fight. Paimon finally came to his senses and turned away, giving Ling Yi a big eye roll. Really, I'm going to give you a bad nickname, like Big Bad Guy. Ling Yi didn't mind the new nickname and gave Paimon a new title in return. With such a bad nickname, I'll give you one too white Fifei. Wow. That's terrible. I'm going to mess up your hair into a bird's nest. Paimon immediately protested. But the protest was ineffective. Ling Yi swiftly ran away, and little Paimon couldn't catch up. Unfortunately, Ling Yi looked up and saw the frost-arm Liyue sitting in the center of the field. He raised an eyebrow, turned around, and almost bumped into little Paimon. Wow. Don't suddenly turn around. Then little Paimon tripped and fell right behind the Liyue. It happened in an instant. Ling Yi quickly grabbed Paimon's foot and threw him towards Ether, landing right in his arms. However, Ling Yi fell right into the Liyue's attack range. A massive fist came crashing down, bringing a chill with it. Paimon watched the fierce attack but couldn't react in time. Ether, who had just caught Paimon, couldn't possibly come to the rescue in time. Ling Yi still had a calm expression, but the massive fist was already above his head. This blow would surely cause severe injury if not death. Ling Yi. Amid Paimon's scream, Ling Yi's figure disappeared under the massive fist. The snow and ice kicked up by the fist completely engulfed Ling Yi. Life or death was uncertain. Paimon panicked and wanted to rush forward to save Ling Yi, but Ether pulled him back. Stay back. Ether's expression darkened, and he immediately drew his weapon to strike at the Liyue. However, the massive figure was a natural disadvantage for Ether. He had to jump and spin, using a nearby pillar to quickly launch himself towards the Liyue's head. Wind blade. The Liyue roared in pain, and another layer of ice covered its body. The attack failed again. At this moment, Ether was cornered by the massive Liyue, and the nearby ice shield Hillichurl archers had already aimed their arrows. But just then, dozens of sharp fire arrows silently shot towards the Liyue's head from above. Ether looked up. Ling Yi stood by the fire pit above, his bow already ablaze, his sharp gaze fixed on the Liyue. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Pretty cool, hey? Since Ling Yi had decided to come to the snowy mountain, he had made thorough preparations. If the Hillichurls could use fire slimes to ignite their arrows, then he could naturally use the fire pit to light his arrows. The battle ended quickly. Ling Yi lightly jumped down from above, and the first thing he did was roughly mess up Paimon's hair. A perfect bird's nest. This was unique to the entire continent of Teyvat. But at this moment, Paimon was already in tears, hugging Ling Yi tightly. Wow. Sniff, I thought something happened to you. Don't scare me like that again. Ether stood helplessly, not knowing how to comfort him. He could only spread his hands and look at Ling Yi. Icy tears fell onto Ling Yi's hand, and he suddenly felt a pang of guilt. Perhaps for him, this was just a game, an adventure, a journey, but for them, this was real life. Maybe he should apologize? I'm sorry, Paimon. I won't do it again. Ling Yi held little Paimon in front of him and nodded solemnly. I promise little Paimon that I won't put myself in danger again and make little Paimon worry. If I break this promise, may my artifact runs never drop a damage bonus goblet. Little Paimon finally stopped crying, puffing his cheeks and crossing his arms, giving Ling Yi a you better keep your promise look, well, just this once. Ling Yi and Ether smiled at each other. Chapter 12, Sky Frost Nail. Ether, Paimon, and Ling Yi rested for a while before preparing to continue their adventure. They successfully unlocked the second fragment. Ling Yi looked up towards a higher point and pointed in a direction, there might be a way to continue upwards over there. I saw torches and stone lanterns up there, those must have been left by someone before us. Ether no longer doubted Ling Yi's adventuring instincts and followed Ling Yi to higher ground. Ling Yi let go of all inhibitions, quickly scaling the cliff face, and finally reached the highest point. It was an Inmo element monument. Ling Yi exhaled a breath of hot air and gave Ether space to work. Thank goodness you're here. I can't solve this Inmo element puzzle. You're welcome. This is what I should do. After solving the wind field, Ling Yi jumped down first. The accelerating wind field sent Ling Yi directly to the other side, and Ling Yi experienced the sensation of gliding. The feeling of extreme flight was very refreshing, with the wind rushing past the ears, as if releasing all stress. Ling Yi thought, in the future, if there's a chance, I'll spend a day gliding at Storm Terror's lair and then go to King Yin Peak for a downhill race. It would be awesome. After landing, before the Hillichurl on the other side could react, Ling Yi used the momentum of the wind field to dash behind the Hillichurl. Drawing out a huge claymore, Ling Yi struck the Hillichurl hard from behind. Pang! The sound was exceptionally clear, and before the Hillichurl could react, it found itself seemingly floating. If the Hillichurl could speak, it would probably let out a stream of curses. Ether also saw Ling Yi's unusually violent performance, looking surprised, and then silently reminded himself that he should probably avoid provoking Ling Yi in the future, or he might end up being struck like a ball. After dealing with the hilly churl threat, Liyue expertly mined, drew a bow, and thawed the fragments ice. Paimon happily jumped in place. Great. Now all the fragments are unlocked, but why is there no movement? Do we need to touch it again? Liyue looked at little Paimon. Although it often seemed clueless, Paimon always managed to give the correct answer. Sometimes Liyue even suspected that little Paimon was a little spy who actually knew everything. After all, there were always theories outside the game about Paimon being a villain. Of course, this was a 12+ game, so that wasn't possible. Liyue continued Paimon's thought and briefly described to Ether how the previous ice blocks were unlocked. Ether nodded in understanding but raised a hand to stop Liyue, who was about to fly down. So, if we touch it again now, it should work. Please let me do it. If the Sky Frost nail really auto-repairs, standing on it would be very dangerous. Seeing Ether's serious expression, Liyue couldn't refuse and felt a warmth in his heart. This kind of person who cared about your safety was truly wonderful. Very well, this mom friend, I'll take it. Then I'll support you from above. Ether drew the familiar dull blade and nodded to Liyue, then flew towards the fragments of the Sky Frost nail below. What followed was unbelievably smooth. The nail steadily and slowly closed, and Ether remained stable even while standing on the nail. When the last fragment closed, the giant nail rose from the ground, and the 1,000-year-old ice melted away. The Sky Frost nail rose high again, reaching towards the clouds. Ether and Paimon also rose slowly with the Sky Frost nail, waving their arms towards Liyue below. Liyue watched the two, feeling a sense of achievement. It felt like finding the excitement of the early days of adventuring. Liyue thought he had become a hardcore player for so long that he had become numb to anything besides rewards. Perhaps the emotions experienced along the way to obtaining rewards were more precious. After some reflection, Liyue continued upwards, following the cliff to the last Inmo element monument. Ether jumped down from above and once again activated the Inmo element to unlock the monument for Liyue. Liyue, riding the wind glider, also reached the top. The Sky Frost nail was truly the highest point of the snowy mountain. Liyue looked into the distance. Without the limitations of electronic devices, even the towers of Fontaine were clearly visible, and Liyue seemed within reach. Even the prototype of Celestia was clear to see. Liyue felt that this world was incredibly real. The three of them gazed at the scenery for a long time, captivated by the extreme beauty. It wasn't until Paimon couldn't help but sneeze that they snapped out of it. Liyue spoke first, the scenery up here is great, but let's not catch a cold. Why don't we go down and take a look? After the Sky Frost nail rose, it seemed to open a big hole down there. There might be clues we need. Ether agreed with Liyue, and they flew down again. Soon, sharp-eyed little Paimon spotted several treasure chests. Wow! It's a big treasure chest. Ether's face also showed a satisfied smile. After all, in the past, despite visiting several dangerous ruins, they hadn't found any trace of treasure chests, not even a common one. Today was the first time seeing such a magnificent treasure chest, so it was very exciting. Liyue, the culprit, generously gave all the items in the treasure chest to Ether and Paimon, taking only the primo gems. After all, Liyue didn't lack these experience books. Liyue was truly a great person. Paimon looked around and discovered a stone tablet. Come and look at this. Far from the snow and strife, reaching this evergreen land of joy, this stele was erected, and the capital was established here, named Seraphin. Well, it feels like a very ancient story, but it doesn't seem related to this nail. Paimon's face scrunched up in confusion, unable to find any clues from the words. Indeed, this was the keystone tablet to open the mechanism door below, but without seeing the previous tablets, it would be impossible to understand. Liyue originally planned to reveal the information about the door below but decided not to deprive Ether of the freedom to explore this world on his own. Liyue could do it for the treasure chests and rewards, but for Ether, this was his own journey. So, Liyue pretended not to know and waited for Ether to discover it during his future adventures in the snowy mountains. Time passed slowly, and the sun began to set. The night wind was too cold, and Paimon suggested leaving the snowy mountain and returning later. Besides, with only these clues, the three couldn't discuss any substantial results. They also hadn't found the reason for the dragon's poison and the Sky Frost nail's purification ability, so they had to leave temporarily. Liyue wouldn't refuse Ether and Paimon's kindness, but as night fell, the three had to set up camp at a nearby site and leave the next day. The howling cold wind blew through the tent. Liyue took out 3 portions of fresh sweet madam from his backpack and handed them to Ether and Paimon. Paimon immediately started drooling, his eyes sparkling. Wow! It's my favorite sweet madam, and it's the most delicious. Liyue, I won't call you a big bad guy anymore. Congratulations on your new nickname, Paimon's personal chef. I command you to make delicious food for me every day. Liyue was amused by Paimon and handed him another portion. There's plenty more. A joyful dinner passed slowly, and it was already late at night. The night in the snowy mountains was not safe, so Ether and Liyue decided to take turns keeping watch. Liyue would guard the first half of the night, and Ether the second half. Of course, Liyue wasn't worried about any hilly churls coming to disturb their sleep. On one hand, there were no respawn points nearby, on the other hand, Liyue had cleared most of the monsters in the area over the past few days, making it hard to find even a single whopper flower, let alone roaming hilly churls. So, Liyue decided to spend the night strengthening artifacts. Although he didn't have any 5-star artifacts yet, some 4-star ones with good stats could be useful. However, no matter how much Liyue tried, the results were either small attack boosts or large defense boosts, making his face darken, and his mood plummeted. So, before the artifacts, the Mora ran out first. Looking at the two-digit Mora, Liyue closed his eyes and sighed. It felt like a sudden return to the past, with no artifacts and no money. Indeed, gambling ruins lives. When Liyue looked up again, it was already the middle of the night, but the snow at the entrance. Liyue was from the south and had never seen such heavy snow. Even in the game, there was no snowy weather, but today it was exceptionally unusual. The snow at the tent entrance was already half a calf high and showed signs of getting even higher. It might soon bury the tent completely. They had to move to higher ground immediately. Liyue quickly woke Ether, observing the surrounding terrain. The originally clear path was now covered in a thick layer of white snow. If not for the in-game map showing the exact location, Liyue would have been completely lost. However, Liyue didn't expect that worse was yet to come. Chapter 13, Liyue's true identity is. The wind grew more ferocious, and little Paimon could no longer fly steadily. Ether had to carry her in his arms and press on. Liyue's mind raced. Logically, such a blizzard shouldn't occur near waypoints or the Statue of the Seven. Liyue had been mapping the snowy mountain day and night but had never seen such weather. Soon, the snow depth exceeded half a person's height, forcing Ether to take temporary shelter under a dead pine tree. Although Liyue could use waypoints to leave, Ether had somehow lost the ability to use them. Liyue couldn't possibly abandon Ether and Paimon. Looking down at the map to confirm their location, Liyue had to shout, but as soon as he opened his mouth, it filled with snow and wind. We must return to the cave immediately. Liyue struggled to move, firmly grasping Ether's hand. Now, only Liyue could see the map and guide them. He was the key to their survival. In the blizzard, the cold intensified rapidly. Liyue's vision blurred with a red glow, and warning beeps sounded in his ears. He couldn't check his status but had one thought. To return to the cave immediately. Perhaps due to the extreme cold, Liyue felt a sudden stiffness. Moving required immense effort, and a feeling of weakness overcame him, as if he hadn't eaten for 2 days. More importantly, Liyue felt his body becoming transparent. She might revert back. His health bar slowly decreased. Liyue quickly ate some sweet madam, along with a mouthful of snow. But this was only a temporary fix. In the end, he took a deep breath and looked back at Ether. Ether had one arm around Paimon and the other gripping Liyue tightly, fearing the blizzard would separate them. Liyue looked at Ether's health bar, which had also dropped to half. There was no other way. Looking at the nearby cave entrance, which was now completely covered in snow, Liyue knew it was their only shelter. Liyue turned and grabbed Ether with both hands, pulling him from the snow like a radish and throwing him towards the cave entrance. Wind Spirit Creation 608. Ether felt a strong gust of the Enmo element behind him. Involuntarily, he let go of Liyue's hand and fell backward, with Paimon rolling on the ground. Liyue's figure instantly disappeared from Ether's sight. Liyue, you jerk. Paimon quickly got up, but the blizzard at the entrance blew him back. With swift movements, Liyue used the map to reach the Statue of the Seven at Windrise. A soft and cute hydro slime stood motionless in front of the statue, accompanied by a large frozen status appearing above Liyue's head. Plus 1694. Phew, I'm alive. The small hydro slime transformed back into Liyue's form. Apparently, dropping below half health causes a reversion to the original form. Liyue almost thought he would be exposed, but his last-ditch effort prevented Ether from noticing anything. Liyue looked towards the snowy mountain. The once clear outline was now blurred by the white blizzard, as if a giant tornado had descended from the sky, pouring into the mountain. No wonder the situation on the snowy mountain was so dire. Liyue couldn't think about the reason and quickly opened the map to teleport. If Ether found him missing, he would surely brave the blizzard to search for him. However, Liyue couldn't choose the teleport point inside the cave. The entrance was near a waypoint, and suddenly appearing there might arouse Ether's suspicion about his ability to use waypoints. He had to choose the statue's location first. Finding the statue's location on the snowy mountain, Liyue's vision returned to the blizzard. Fortunately, this area was still clear, the statue's power melting the surrounding snow. Quickly moving to the large disc ahead, Liyue jumped down. The blizzard here was minimal due to the statue's protection. Liyue easily reached the bottom, where the cave entrance was not buried thanks to the overhead cover. Liyue rushed through the cave, moving quickly upward, and sure enough, saw Ether looking anxious. The blizzard was incredibly strong. The hole Liyue had created by throwing Ether into the cave was now buried again. Ether was using his sword to dig, with Paimon helping with his hands. Liyue quickly stopped Ether. I'm fine, don't dig anymore. Ether and Paimon looked at Liyue in surprise. Compared to their soaked and disheveled appearance, Liyue only had a bit of snow on his hair and boots, not looking like someone who had been through a blizzard. Paimon seemed dazed. Was this the true power of a great adventurer? Had he and Ether been holding Liyue back all along? How did you escape? Never mind, I'm just glad you're okay. You scared me to death. Liyue hesitated, realizing he couldn't explain his escape without revealing his secret. Even saying he circled back wouldn't make sense given the time and his appearance. In other words, Liyue didn't know how to explain. This is a secret method of the great adventurer, can't reveal it. Ether looked at Liyue's slightly guilty expression and slowly regained his composure, recalling Diluc's words. Diluc was Mondstadt's Dark Knight hero, a loyal guardian of the city. If Liyue were truly trustworthy, Diluc wouldn't have prevented him from participating in the mission to save Dvalin. Moreover, Ether had learned about the Fachui's actions from Jean. The powerful 11 harbingers, each possessing godlike powers. Considering this, Ling Yi seemed quite suspicious. From such a strong storm, Ling Yi had accurately found the cave entrance without hesitation and quickly returned through another path. With such power, could he really be just an unknown adventurer? Or perhaps, Ling Yi was one of the 11 harbingers? He needed to keep a close eye on him. Fortunately, Ling Yi couldn't read minds, or he would have cried out in injustice at such wild speculation. Seeing that Ether didn't intend to question further, Ling Yi quickly changed the subject. Let's go down and rest. Your clothes are all wet. I saw a hilly churl campfire downstairs, we can use it to dry off. Ether and Paimon agreed with Ling Yi's suggestion. The three sat around the campfire, feeling the long-awaited warmth. Since they weren't planning to sleep anyway, Ling Yi looked for something to do. The sad artifacts were already enhanced, leaving only one task. To complete Albedo's mission of mapping the area. Drawing maps was a big task. Even though Ling Yi had immediately mapped the snowy mountain based on the system map, he still needed to mark the minerals and plants. Moreover, the snowy mountain didn't have layered maps, so Ling Yi had to do this himself. Ling Yi was fully focused on the task, not noticing Ether and Paimon's strange looks. So, Ling Yi is actually one of the 11 harbingers, right? Why else would he be mapping the snowy mountain in such detail? He even knows about rare items like peculiar teeth. Even experienced adventurers who work on the snowy mountain year-round couldn't map it so precisely. Yet, Ling Yi, the great adventurer, had only been here for 2 days and already mastered the entire mountain. His power must be terrifying. Chapter 14, Layer +1. The night gradually passed, and a beam of focused sunlight slowly spread from the crevices of the cave to Ling Yi's eyes. Ling Yi finally stood up, stretched, and by now the map had been completely filled in. Ether and Paimon were lying on the side of the cave entrance resting. Ling Yi had no idea when the two of them had fallen asleep. At some point, the wind and snow outside had stopped, which was good news. Wake up, the sun is shining on your butt. Ling Yi pulled out a feather from somewhere and lightly brushed it against Ether's cheek, actually startling him. Ether reached out and grabbed it, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the culprit, Ling Yi, smiling at him. Ether felt a bit embarrassed. Ever since he had started guessing Ling Yi's identity last night, he now felt like he had ants crawling all over him, and everything seemed off. Shaking his head to clear the strange thoughts, Ether woke Paimon from his dreams. Ah! I'm so tired. What's for breakfast today? As soon as Paimon finished speaking, Ling Yi handed him a fisherman's toast and fried egg, while Ether also received a portion of honey-glazed carrot fried meat. Ling Yi, it seems you've prepared a lot of food for emergencies, so you must have traveled through many countries on adventures, right? Do you have any insights into Snezhnia? Ling Yi paused, turned to look at Ether, and after a moment of silence, replied, well, I only know that there are 11 very powerful harbingers. As for the rest, I might not know much. The map hasn't even come out, what can I say? Paimon looked at Ling Yi in confusion, no knowledge at all. I thought the great adventurer Ling Yi, having been through so many dangerous places, would have gone to the extremely cold Snezhnia. You shouldn't be completely clueless. Ether and Paimon's suspicions grew stronger. Of course, Ling Yi also noticed the current situation. His behavior yesterday was indeed a bit unusual, so it was natural for people to be suspicious. It seemed that he had to come up with a solution. Ling Yi took a deep breath, seeming to have made a decision, and approached Ether, taking his hand. Previously, I concealed my identity because I had no choice, but I believe you will help me hide my identity, right? Ether looked at Ling Yi coldly, help you hide your identity. You Fachui came to this Mondstadt city to interfere with Mondstadt's internal affairs, and there must be deeper schemes behind it. How could I help you hide it? Fachui? Thinking his identity had been exposed, Ling Yi looked confused. What strange word did I hear? This must be a big misunderstanding. Ling Yi quickly waved his hands, you must have misunderstood something, I'm not Fachui, I am. Ling Yi paused, then changed his tone. Anyway, I'm a good person. Since his identity wasn't completely exposed, he might as well protect his cover a bit more. In an instant, Ling Yi had decided that he might have to take the path of the riddle master, saying things that weren't necessarily true but would confuse people, perfectly hiding his strange identity. Ahem. My identity cannot be revealed, but I am definitely not the Fachui you mentioned. This time, I came to Mondstadt with my own purposes, but please believe that I also hope Dvalin can return to normal and Mondstadt can return to normal, so our goals do not conflict. Ether had never seen such a determined and serious Ling Yi, and for a moment, he was influenced. After a long while, he responded, if that's the case, I believe you. Paimon's gaze shifted between the two, gradually revealing a subtle expression. Afterward, Ether and Ling Yi tacitly avoided the topic and quickly descended the mountain while the wind and snow had subsided. They then parted ways at the snowy mountain camp. It wasn't until Ether was completely out of sight that Ling Yi let out a long sigh of relief. He had never been so nervous from childhood to adulthood, let alone pretending to be some kind of worldly master. Suddenly taking on this role was really uncomfortable. He just hoped this layer of his cover could stay on a bit longer. Others who came to this other world seemed to have smooth sailing, but for him, in just one day, 3 clever people suspected his identity, facing life-threatening situations or snowstorm attacks. Why was Teyvat so dangerous? Ling Yi was already starting to have second thoughts. This was just a slight involvement in the main storyline, and he had to add a layer of cover to protect his identity. What would he do in the future? Perhaps he should consider another path, simply ignoring everything else, settling in Liyue, opening a shop, and selling 3-star weapons and specialties from various countries. He would surely be successful, and at least he wouldn't have to worry about Mora. As long as the traveler was there, Oziel from the sea wouldn't be able to come ashore, right? However, a notification sound quickly appeared. Geo Sigil unlocked. It seemed that the traveler had increased the adventure level after completing the Snowy Mountain mission, and the Geo Sigil had opened with the level. Finally, there was a place to expend his endless energy. However, his suddenly inspired shop plan seemed to have instantly failed. What is the most profitable thing to do in Teyvat? Rob the Northland Bank? Become Morux? No. It's farming Geo Sigils. Not to mention whether the first two are legal or reasonable, just considering the Geo Sigil safe, environmentally friendly and capable of unblocking Teyvat's energy channels, it is far better than the first two. Selling 3-star weapons would only fetch a few tens of thousands at most, and you would need to obtain them through wishes, requiring stable customers, and you might even have to pay taxes, open a shop, and find shopkeepers. But Geo Sigils are refreshed daily without fail, earning hundreds of thousands in just a minute. With no costs, no competitors, is there any business more cost-effective and profitable than this? Moreover, the most important point is that he had no stamina limit. Doesn't that mean he could farm as much as he wanted? After organizing his thoughts, the hardcore player's hands couldn't stop. Here comes the sudden wealth. However, before that, he needed to find Albedo first, as his task had not been submitted yet. But, as a person, one must not be complacent, especially in this troubled time. Through the waypoints, Lingyi hummed a tune and arrived at the place where he had last seen Albedo, but now there was no one here. It even felt like it had been ransacked. Could it be that when Albedo left the camp, he didn't put a protective cover on his alchemy equipment, and it was easily damaged? Could it be that the wind and snow were too strong last night? But Lingyi quickly dismissed this idea. Although the camp had been messed up, there wasn't a large amount of melted snow inside. Only the documents that were originally on the table seemed to have been taken away. Treasure hoarders? Impossible. With such a big snowstorm last night, how could ordinary treasure hoarders choose to go up the mountain at this time? Besides, most of the treasure hoarders' personnel were on the outskirts, and even the Fatui were more likely than the treasure hoarders. Moreover, what was taken were Albedo's alchemy-related records, which were useless to the treasure hoarders and couldn't be sold for a good price. And this scene seemed somewhat familiar to Lingyi. Sigh. If only he hadn't skipped all the storylines before. That's right, Lingyi was half a storyline skipper. Although he could be familiar with every resource location in Teyvat as if it were his own home, he was only half knowledgeable about the storylines. It was like watching a movie, only knowing the good guys won in the end, but not knowing how they won. Moreover, it had been more than 2 years since he had gone through the storylines, and Lingyi had long forgotten everything. A familiar voice came from behind. Miss Adventurer, why are you here? Lingyi jumped and turned around. How did Albedo walk without making a sound? He was just about to submit the task. Here is the map you asked me to draw. How is it? Albedo took Lingyi's hand-drawn map and carefully examined all the details, then looked up at Lingyi again. Very detailed. I'll take it then. But I don't have that many Mora on me right now. Please come with me to the cave, Miss Adventurer. Lingyi had been waiting for the system to give him primo gems as a reward for wishes, but he didn't hear anything. And Mora? Had the reward changed? But Lingyi glanced at the control panel, which still showed incomplete, and the reward was still primo gems. Lingyi's eyes narrowed slightly, finally noticing something unusual. The Albedo in front of him seemed to be missing something. Lingyi's eyes held a hint of wariness as he asked, why don't I see Sucrose? Is he also in the cave? But the Albedo in front of him paused for 2 seconds, then drew a single-handed sword from behind his back and lunged at Lingyi. Is my acting that bad? If you notice something's wrong, you just silence me directly. The Albedo in front of him said nothing, his swift swordsmanship slashing towards Lingyi. Lingyi knew he didn't have that kind of swordsmanship and could only choose to evade rather than fight. This wasn't some mindless hilly churl that Lingyi could handle with a feint. This is terrible. Rock shield. A transparent rock shield blocked a fatal blow, but it shattered after just 1 hit. It's over. This Albedo's level must be very high, and he might not be subject to the world level control. Lingyi calculated that he had no chance of winning. However, Lingyi didn't plan to flee immediately. Firstly, the 160 primo gems task item was still in his hands, and secondly, the real Albedo had arrived. Lingyi dodged another sword strike, but at the same time, a sharp blade pierced through Albedo's body. The severely injured Albedo let out a roar, and suddenly grew larger in front of Lingyi. A giant whopper flower emerged from the ground, its crimson eyes extremely fierce. Be careful. Albedo shielded Lingyi behind him and rushed forward with his sword. Lingyi also sighed. So it was just a flower Albedo. That made things much easier. But this also meant that Rhindottir's golden creation might be watching everything that was happening here from the snowy mountain. Lingyi did not join the battle for the time being but warily observed his surroundings. Even with elemental sight, he couldn't see any sign of the other figure. As expected, Albedo was a perfect creation with superb strength. The flower Albedo soon died at Albedo's hands, and the map Lingyi drew safely fell into Albedo's possession. Albedo sheathed his single-handed sword and looked at the seemingly frightened Lingyi. Are you all right? Ling Yi pretended to know nothing and shook his head, instead marveling at the previous whopper flower's location. Is that also a result of alchemy? I've only seen sweet flowers 10 times their size before, I didn't expect to see a whopper flower 10 times its size, this is too terrifying. Albedo did not speak but seriously took Ling Yi's drawn map and began to examine it carefully, his expression becoming more and more solemn. Just an adventurer. Miss Ling Yi is truly amazing. I even want to hire Miss Ling Yi as my exclusive assistant. Ling Yi smiled slightly, showing his good upbringing. I'm glad you recognize my strength as the greatest adventurer, but I might not be able to handle the assistant role, after all, I'm not familiar with alchemy. Albedo looked at Ling Yi with burning eyes, I'm serious. And I think we might be the same kind, aren't we? So direct? Although Ling Yi didn't know why this body was a slime, perhaps the true enigma in front of him, cried Prince, really knew something, after all, this was the calcs. But when he said they were the same kind, Ling Yi didn't think his situation was the same as Albedo's. He considered himself an elemental creature, while Albedo's body was half from the abyss. Ling Yi called him a hybrid creature, the two were fundamentally different. But Ling Yi was very cautious and didn't reject him outright. Oh. The same kind? Why do you say that? I saw it, last night. Ling Yi wanted to hit himself. In one night, everything that should and shouldn't be exposed had almost all been revealed. In fact, before being teleported to the Statue of the Seven, Ling Yi had already returned to his original form, but ether had been thrown into the cave by him and hadn't seen it. However, Albedo had directly seen his form as a slime. Ling Yi could only give up resisting. Fine, let's talk. Albedo rested his chin on one hand, why don't we start with, where you came from? Chapter 15, yet another layer to the disguise. Oh? You, like the traveler, come from outside the world of Teyvat? That is truly fascinating. Ling Yi nodded, stuffing a piece of sweet madam into her mouth, and replied, to be precise, from a world one level higher than outside Teyvat. Ling Yi didn't know how to explain it either. This was just a game world, but what she told Albedo wasn't wrong, she just didn't spell it out directly. One level higher. Albedo's mind instantly flashed through many possibilities, but he quickly dismissed them. This misadventurer had no reason to lie. Then, may I ask, what is your purpose in coming to the continent of Teyvat? Speaking of that, Ling Yi wasn't really sure either. Perhaps it was just an accident? But if she had come all this way and did nothing, that would be too lame. After thinking for a moment, Ling Yi gave her answer. Perhaps, a witness. Ling Yi didn't believe she possessed the power to turn the tide or change everyone's fate. It felt more like watching a 3D movie. The traveler witnesses the future of Teyvat, and in turn, she, from a higher level, witnesses the traveler's story. It was just that while playing the game, she had immersed herself as the traveler. Now, separated, it had become clearer. Albedo adeptly grasped the keywords in Ling Yi's words. Just a witness? So you have no intention of intervening? To put it another way, do you know the future of Teyvat? Ling Yi was inwardly startled. To draw a conclusion from just a few words, did she really need to improve her IQ? However, lying held no real benefit. Ling Yi could only nod toward Albedo. I haven't seen the final outcome. Perhaps there is still room for change. But at the very least, Mondstadt's crisis will be resolved soon. The Inmo Archon Barbados will lead the traveler to awaken the dragon tormented by poisoned blood, granting the wind dragon its freedom once more. Albedo suddenly chuckled softly. Then, Miss Adventurer, why are you telling me all this? Well, of course, because you're the in-game Riddler, connected to the Hexen Circle, a creation of Rhine-Dottir's alchemy, and have ties to things beyond Teyvat. But Ling Yi couldn't put it so bluntly. She could only say, my arrival here was also an accident. So, if possible, I'd like to return to my original world. I know you're not simple either. I just thought, the more friends, the more paths forward, right? Albedo looked into Ling Yi's sincere eyes and returned a firm gaze. I'll keep an eye out for you. Friend. The two agreed that if there were any clues, they would place a sweet flower on the table at the camp in Dragonspine as a signal. Overall, it was a satisfying conversation. After leaving Dragonspine, Ling Yi, now in possession of the enormous sum of 160 primogems, sat under the great tree at Windrise, ready to wish. Combined with the resources gathered from exploring the map and the primogems earned from Albedo this time, she had enough for 20 wishes. A gentle breeze blew. No wonder Venti liked this place. Ling Yi was starting to appreciate the air here too, a tranquility far from the city's bustle, and more than that, a feeling of relaxation. In her previous life, every day was busy with many things. If she had plenty of time, she wouldn't have chosen to skip the storylines. At some point, grinding the map had become a burden. Whenever a new area was released, she had to scrape every blade of grass clean. Not reaching 10% exploration progress would leave her feeling restless. But now, life had truly become a single-player game. So, perhaps from now on, she could also stop and slow down? Taking a deep breath of the fresh air, Ling Yi climbed onto a branch of the great tree, slowly lay down, and closed her eyes. A small finch, unnoticed, quietly approached and nestled beside Ling Yi, also settling down to rest. By the time Ling Yi awoke from her slumber, she was nearly surrounded by little finches. Wow, so much fowl. Ah. Of course not. Ling Yi wasn't that cold-blooded. After playing with the finches for a while, Ling Yi jumped down from the tree and opened the system's wishing panel. Switching to Acquaint Fates, she tapped lightly for a 10 pull. Ling Yi's eyes widened in surprise. A golden light, this seemed somewhat unbelievable. She had never been this lucky before. She had only done 10 pulls on this banner. Ling Yi suddenly grew concerned about her lifespan. Would she be struck dead by a potato falling from the sky later? Opening them one by one, the adorable little Kikai lay quietly on the panel. A healer? That's awesome. Ling Yi quickly tried it out. Sure enough, she could summon an ice attribute orb, the Herald of Frost, to circle around her. Okay, now she could even save on medicine. She still had 10 more pulls. Ling Yi tapped them all at once. As expected, purple. The wandering even star appeared directly in her hand. After a brief silence, Ling Yi suddenly grew even more worried about her personal safety. The wandering even star was simply the most suitable weapon for her current self. Moreover, its ascension materials could be easily obtained in Mondstadt. It was practically heaven sent. Ling Yi looked up at the sky. Did someone secretly tweak the wish rates? But Ling Yi could only speculate idly. She quickly shook off the messy thoughts and headed straight into Mondstadt city to find Catherine and turn in her commissions. Although Ling Yi also had a so-called adventurer's handbook, it merely recorded all the commissions she had accepted and completed normally, without any extra rewards. This indirectly meant she missed out on a lot of bonuses. But it was replaced by unlimited daily commissions. At 10 primo gems per commission, she directly earned over 100. Not to mention the bonus for completing 4, granting an extra 2, allowing her to harvest the equivalent of 2 wishes per day. After turning in the commissions, Ling Yi glanced sideways and saw Captain Kaya walking into the city from the gates. The moment he spotted Ling Yi, he waved in greeting. Yo! If it isn't the great adventurer Ling Yi. I wonder if you're busy today. Could you take on a commission for me? Kaya smiled brightly. Ling Yi instantly raised 10,000 red flags in her heart. She hadn't forgotten the last time she was tricked. Could anything good come from him seeking her out now? Very busy. Probably don't have time to help right now. Ling Yi mercilessly rejected Kaya's smile. Is that so? But I just saw you didn't accept any other commissions after turning those in. Is there something you need to attend to? Why not tell me? Perhaps I can help? Assisting every guest who comes to Mondstadt is the teaching of the Knights of Favonius. Ling Yi really felt like cursing out loud. How long had he been watching her from the side, to even know she hadn't accepted any new commissions? Perhaps she should put on a performance of crazy literature and let Kaya experience what a lunatic feels like. Of course, in the end, Ling Yi didn't do that. After all, she still had to return to Mondstadt city and couldn't become the talk of the town. So, Ling Yi immediately came up with an idea. Well, this is probably something Captain Kaya can't help with. I'm going to the Cat's Tail Tavern to play cards. Chapter 16, Turning the Tables. Playing cards. That was indeed a great excuse. Both Kaya and Ling Yi thought the same thing. However, Kaya clearly wasn't ready to give up yet. Genius Invocation TCG? Actually, I often go to Cat's Tail Tavern to play cards too. I just wonder, what rank of player is Miss Adventurer Ling Yi? Ling Yi had come up with this excuse on the spot. There was no time to find 2 cards, let alone obtain a player rank certification. I'm just a beginner, nowhere near as skilled as Captain Kaya. But if you truly have a commission, please speak to Miss Catherine. I plan to rest today. Though the words were a clear dismissal, Kaya acted as if he hadn't heard them at all. He didn't mention the commission and instead started explaining Genius Invocation TCG. The commission isn't urgent. On the contrary, Miss Ling Yi, did you come to the tavern just after hearing about Genius Invocation TCG without assembling your own deck yet? I happen to have one I can lend you. Seeing Kaya's enthusiastic demeanor, Ling Yi had no reason to refuse, though it would be even better if he didn't insist on being her tutor. Ling Yi's smile was starting to feel stiff. She changed the subject, crossing her arms and speaking in a serious tone. Actually, I'm the reincarnation of a legendary card player. After becoming invincible, I felt immensely lonely, so I decided to start over from scratch. Just transfer me 5,000 mora, and I'll teach you the supreme, undefeatable method, guaranteeing you'll sweep the board. Kaya hadn't expected Ling Yi to say something like this. It had a certain pyramid scheme charm to it. But if she was willing to tell such a lie just to shake him off, wasn't that all the more reason to investigate further? Then, Kaya took out 50,000 mora from his pocket and placed it in Ling Yi's hand. Just 50,000 for the sure win method? Is this the friends and family discount? There was a certain kind of beauty in the clear, innocent eyes of a university student who had just been scammed. Ling Yi nearly spat out blood. Are you actually serious about this? Then I'll give you something awkward. Picking up the previous topic, she continued, since you're so sincere, I won't trick you. First, gather all the character, weapon, talent, and artifact cards. I'll assemble 3 decks for you. Any one of them will let you dominate effortlessly. Even Ling Yi had spent a long time in the game collecting all the cards. So, Captain Kaya, can you really produce all the cards? Under Ling Yi's teasing gaze, Kaya indeed put on a troubled expression. If not for true dedication, it would be very difficult to produce them all. But soon, Kaya thought of something, turned around, and walked into Cat's Tail Tavern. Please wait a moment. Wait, he's not going to. Ling Yi watched Kaya enter the tavern door and quickly followed to eavesdrop by the entrance. What she heard was Kaya announcing loudly at the entrance of Cat's Tail Tavern, I've invited a legendary Genius Invocation TCG player. Would anyone like to challenge them? But this master came in a hurry without their deck, so could the proprietor lend them one. Then, cheers erupted inside the tavern, along with the adorable meows of little cats. At this moment, Liyue just wanted to turn and run. I was wrong. From now on, I need to start running the moment I'm within 100 meters of Kea. Then, Kea opened the door and placed a heavy, full box of Genius Invocation TCG cards into Liyue's hands. Please begin, Teacher Liyue. Liyue's vision darkened. Step by step, she slowly shuffled into the entrance of Cat's Tail Tavern, where everyone inside was eagerly looking at her, rubbing their hands in anticipation. The cards in their hands were practically itching to be played. Please, Teacher Liyue, give us a demonstration. Kea had even thoughtfully secured a spot for Liyue. Fine then, I'll show them what I've got. Back then, to complete the achievement, she had played cards day and night for weeks, even assembling countless teams to handle different situations. So, losing? Absolutely impossible. Starting from the entrance, Liyue won a match, moved to another spot, and eventually even sat in the small room at the very back. True to her word, she didn't lose a single match, and she even used different characters every time, leaving her opponents completely unprepared. Kea, watching from behind Liyue, was utterly captivated, giving her enthusiastic applause after every victory, which made Liyue extremely uncomfortable. Time passed quickly. By the time Liyue had finally played against every card player in the tavern, night had already fallen. Kea didn't hold back his praise for Liyue. Teacher Liyue truly is a legendary card player. Even I have to admit defeat. Liyue shot Kea a sidelong glance. Did he look like someone with urgent business? So the commission he mentioned during the day really was just an excuse, wasn't it? But calculating it, she had earned 50,000 mora from Kea, so she had profited. Now that they were alone, Liyue decided to lay her cards on the table. Alright. Enough joking. You've been following me all day. I really need to rest. If you have something to say, say it now. Kea became uncharacteristically serious. Sitting directly opposite Liyue, he spoke slowly, let me tell you a secret first, a personal secret of mine. Please don't let it slip. Actually, my grandfather was a pirate. Don't believe me? Look at my eye patch. It was passed down to me by my grandfather. This is proof of our bloodline. Liyue. I don't believe a word of it. Liyue gave Kea a look that said, do I look like an idiot to you, urging him to keep spinning his tail. So, are you going to say next that you want to commission me to find the treasure your grandfather left behind? Not at all, not at all. Yesterday, I was reading through my grandfather's notes and indeed discovered the treasure he left behind. It's hidden in the lost ruins of Arcadia. But according to the intel, it's a divine sword. It's a divine sword my grandfather obtained from Celestia during his pirate days. He even used it to slay an 8-headed sea serpent, a silver-haired siren, and an abyssal evil dragon. But now, I can't find the exact location of the Arcadia ruins. I thought adventurer Liyue, with her vast experience, might have some clues. Hearing the familiar lines from the game, Liyue almost couldn't stop herself from calling Kea a big liar. Keeping her expression neutral, Liyue also put on a thoughtful look and, gazing into Kea's eyes, said, oh? Is that divine sword the kind that grants invincible power to whoever holds it? Kea raised an eyebrow, looking at Liyue with keen interest. What? Does Miss Liyue actually have relevant information? Liyue looked left and right to confirm no one was around, then leaned close to Kea's ear and whispered, perhaps I not only know the location of this divine sword but even have other news to share with you. After speaking, Liyue extended her hand toward Kea, palm up, and gave it a little bounce. A clear gesture of pay up. Information fee? That's only natural. Kea took out another 50,000 mora from his bag and placed it in Liyue's hand. Liyue nodded in satisfaction and replied, actually, I've already encountered the Arcadia ruins you mentioned in the wilderness and explored them. It took immense effort, and I was even injured by the traps inside. It took a long time to recover. But in the end, I successfully discovered the divine sword deep within the ruins. Then, with a reluctant look, she quietly drew a sword of dissension from her backpack and placed it on the table. But since this sword is a treasure of your grandfather's, Kea, it wouldn't be right for me to keep it. So, I can only part with it, though it pains me. For just 88,888, you can take it home. Looking at the sword of dissension before him, Kea's eye finally twitched. He felt like he might go bankrupt today. Chapter 17, 800 Schemes. Kea and Liyue exchanged a knowing smile. Haha, it seems Miss Liyue and I are kindred spirits. To be frank, a group of treasure hoarders has recently appeared in Mondstadt. I plan to use a fake ruin to lure them in, making it easier to round them all up. I wonder if Miss Liyue would be willing to help? As for these 88,888 mora, consider it your commission fee. Liyue unceremoniously pocketed the money into her backpack and then handed the dawn sword she was holding to Kea. No, consider this dawn sword sold to you. However, I can provide you with a candidate the traveler. Not only will you not need to pay them, but I believe if you just tell Paimon there's a treasure, they'll help you for free. Looking at the glimmer in Liyue's eyes, Kea smiled faintly, his 800 schemes activating once more. That's true. But could I trouble Miss Liyue to take on the role of an informant? Liyue stood up indignantly, thinking to herself, trying to rope me into being the sucker? On what grounds? Just because you're as pretty as a flower, An informant? Oh. Why should I do such thankless work? I've already found you a laborer, haven't I? Surely you can handle the rest easily. Kaya put on a troubled expression, is that so? Then I'll have no choice but to arrest you for pyramid scheming. After all, I haven't received those invincible, undefeated in all the world genius invocation TCG cards you promised, have I? Hey? Lingyi looked at Kaya, her eyes narrowing slightly. I admit your genius invocation TCG skills are indeed unmatched. But what you promised was to teach me an undefeated deck. I'm just wondering, among the several decks Miss Lingyi assembled, which one is actually the strongest? Indeed, each deck had its own strengths and weaknesses. Their performance varied in different hands, and victory couldn't be guaranteed every game. So Kaya had found a loophole in the wording. But Lingyi had to admit she had already fallen into the trap. Ahem. A 100,000 mora errand fee in the end, I'm still the one profiting. Lingyi comforted herself this way, feeling much more balanced inside. Alright, alright. To think the esteemed cavalry captain has no horse to ride, and on top of that, no usable subordinates. It's truly worrying for Mondstadt's security. As a good citizen of Fontaine from abroad, I'll help you this one time. So, what do you need me to do? Satisfied, Kaya took out a pre-prepared note from behind him and handed it to Lingyi. Then, please place these riddles at the locations I've specified, wait for the traveler on the outskirts of Springvale, and give them the second note. Got it, got it. Asterisk these locations, anyone who's done the quest probably can't forget them. But who would have guessed Kaya has such literary talent, writing riddles so poetically? With all those schemes running through his head all day, he still found time to study asterisk. Under Lingyi's strange gaze, Kaya left the tavern first, and Lingyi also made her way to the front counter. Hello, here are the borrowed genius invocation TCG cards. Please take them back. Meow meow. The first to answer Lingyi was the black cat on the counter or, more poetically, the dark clouds treading on snow followed by the proprietress. Hello, I'm Margaret, the owner of the Cat's Tail Tavern. I've already heard about your record of 10 consecutive wins. So, please keep this deck as a gift. We hope you'll come play cards at the tavern again when you have time. You're always welcome. Oh, right. Although Captain Kaya said you are a legendary card player, we couldn't find your player record. So, for now, we can only award you the most basic novice card player rank. But I'm sure you'll successfully achieve legendary card player status again in the future. Little Diona also popped out from behind the counter, looking intently at Lingyi. Yes. You're different from those drunkard uncles. You're really amazing. I want to become a powerful legendary card player like you in the future too. All this praise made Lingyi a bit embarrassed. Her face unconsciously flushed half red, as not many people had ever praised Lingyi like this. Lingyi said somewhat sheepishly, I'm just average, really. I'll come again next time. With that, she dashed out like the wind. Even from far away, Lingyi could still hear proprietress Margaret's chuckling laughter. Patting her cheeks in the night breeze, Lingyi didn't delay. She directly climbed the windmill to place the treasure chest, then used the waypoints to reach the cliff top. Braving the bouncing attacks of slimes and with a shield active, she buried the treasure chest in the soil. Finally, she returned to the inn in Mondstadt to stay the night. Sweet dreams. Today, Kaya would seek out the traveler to issue the quest. Lingyi also left Mondstadt early in the morning, sitting by a small path waiting for someone. Coincidentally, there was a cooking pot nearby. Lingyi took the opportunity to prepare quite a bit of food, the delicious aroma wafting straight up. Especially the mushroom skewers. Such opportunities for barbecue were rare for Lingyi. After all, in reality, a single skewer could sell for a sky-high price of 10 mora, while in Teyvat, free grilled fish and skewers were there for the taking. Wasn't that amazing? As for ingredients, there was no need to worry. Common ingredients could be bought from shops. As for the rest, like fowl, to be honest, Lingyi had practically scoured all the pigeons and wild boar in Mondstadt a few days ago, and still had plenty of chilled meat left. Of course, although Lingyi coveted little Timmy's pigeons, she didn't dare touch them. If I make little Timmy cry, I'm afraid those 2 knights at Mondstadt's gate will rush over and cuff me straight to jail. After barbecuing to her heart's content, Lingyi finally spotted Ether, along with little Paimon, rushing towards her from the horizon. Wow! It smells so good. Someone nearby is making delicious food. Paimon's eyes lit up as she charged towards Lingyi's location. Ether felt quite helpless. Asterisk we just had lunch at the Good Hunter at noon, and it hasn't been that long. Paimon is hungry again, asterisk thinking about the mora he'd recently earned from commissions, Ether worriedly thought he might go bankrupt soon. Lingyi, holding 5 mushroom skewers, had been waiting at the crossroads for a long time. Besides treasure, delicious food was the best way to attract little Paimon. So, as long as Lingyi held the fragrant food, she wasn't afraid Ether wouldn't come over. It's Lingyi. Paimon pointed into the distance, and Ether also saw Lingyi's figure. Could the powerful adventurer Kaya mentioned be Miss Lingyi? Since parting on the mountain last time, Ether had actually felt quite regretful. Lingyi had taken him treasure hunting and saved his life on the mountain, yet he had doubted her afterward. It was indeed wrong of him, but he hadn't figured out how to apologize, which was why he hadn't spoken up. Well, this time I'll apologize properly. Unaware of Ether's inner thoughts, after luring Paimon over, Lingyi stuffed all the mushroom skewers in her hand into Paimon's grasp, effectively sealing the mouth of the gods. So Ether could only step forward to greet her himself. Lingyi, about last time. Not wanting any complications, Liyue felt like slacking off. What does a qualified NPC need to do? Of course, clearly and concisely explain what needs to be done next. So, Liyue cut off Ether's words, let's not talk about that now. I didn't expect Kaya to commission you to find clues about the ruins. If I didn't have urgent business, I wouldn't have sold this information to Kaya. But don't worry, Kaya has already paid the intelligence fee. Here's the clue for you. I have faith in you. With that, Liyue shoved the pre-prepared note into Ether's hand, then turned and strode away. Ether looked at the note in his hand, reaching out a hand in a futile gesture. Miss Liyue must hate me because of what happened on the mountain. Chapter 18, Going All Out. But Liyue hadn't actually thought much about it. He had simply eaten too many grilled mushroom and chicken skewers earlier and was tired of them, otherwise he wouldn't have left more than 5 skewers for Paimon. At this moment, he wanted something to drink, but he didn't have any beverage recipes that could be made on hand. Only then did he remember that he was too nervous during the last main quest and forgot that he could buy some holiday brew and other drinks from Master Diluc, so he was anxious to leave and return to Mondstadt. Liyue rushed back to Mondstadt, went straight to the tavern, asked the bartender for a recipe and a drink, then sat in a corner, sipping slowly. Although it was just a simple non-alcoholic beverage, Liyue still savored a tipsy atmosphere amidst the strong smell of alcohol from the adjacent table, and then overheard the drunken ramblings of the nearby drunkards. Sitting in front of Liyue was a merchant from Liyue, who was now sighing because his trade route was blocked. Due to the influence of storm terror, a large number of wandering hilly-churl had gathered outside Mondstadt city, making it very dangerous. And sitting behind Liyue to his right was a Mondstadt adventurer, also sighing, seemingly having taken on a very difficult quest and worrying about how to solve it. As for the person in the corner, Liyue glanced at Dane Slave's golden hair and mask, but didn't dare to look a second time, lest he be dragged into working for the Riddle Man. It seemed that due to his arrival, all the in-game plot lines had advanced quite a bit. Liyue felt like he wouldn't be able to finish all the quests. Calculations showed that the main quest should have progressed to the summoning of Storm Terror. Since he had brought back the 2 crystallize from Dodapa Gorge when he was farming earlier and given them all to Ether, Ether only needed to retrieve 1 more to fully repair the strings of the sky. Master Diluc had also changed the meeting point to the winery, so it was time for Liyue to reappear. After resting, Liyue found a hidden waypoint, ascended, and the sea breeze on the cliff edge was indeed very refreshing. However, Liyue hadn't come empty-handed, he naturally had to make some preparations. Perhaps, Liyue had been thinking about how to perfectly participate in the main quest ever since he went to Liyue. First and foremost, he couldn't expose his identity. Diluc and everyone else had already seen Liyue's appearance, but what if the one participating in the main quest was actually a slime? Or rather, what if it was a great super invincible overlord slime? If Liyue could give birth to a god, then why couldn't Mondstadt give birth to a new god? Liyue had considered this. If he was exposed, he would use this excuse. However, this was a fallback plan for failure, and Liyue felt that he wouldn't fail so easily. The main task of this plot segment was originally to reveal the true identity of Venti Barbatos, and then introduce the Abyss Power as the hidden antagonist. However, Liyue felt that this part could be sped up. The main reason for the failure in this segment was the Abyss Mage's instigation, perhaps with a bit of Venti's deliberate actions. This needed further investigation. In reality, Valen's intelligence hadn't been greatly affected, and he could still communicate normally, so the only thing to deal with was the Abyss Mage. Liyue's true form was a slime, insignificant compared to Valen's size. So, Liyue decided to take a bold gamble and followed Valen back to Storm Terror's lair. However, even if he failed, Liyue wasn't worried. It's just a slime, what does that have to do with me, Liyue? So, what Liyue needed to prepare was to establish a good relationship with the slime army nearby, sneak in, then prepare a hook, dig a hole, bury himself in it, and just wait for Dvalin to arrive. Then he would latch directly onto Dvalin. Dvalin was currently in immense pain from the corrosion of the poisoned blood, so his perception would naturally be greatly reduced. This was an important reason for Liyue's decision. Having reverted to his slime form, Liyue became even more unrestrained, hopping and rolling into a corner, rubbing against the ground, and easily burrowing into the soil. He then pulled a bush from nearby and placed it on his head, leaving only a pair of sparkling eyes exposed. The grass slime nearby were stunned and quietly moved further away from Liyue. Night fell, and the sky brightened again. Another day passed like this. Liyue felt very comfortable sleeping in the dirt. Liyue thought haphazardly, perhaps slimes were naturally suited to sleeping in the dirt. Thump, thump, thump. Dense footsteps echoed from underground, the sound very clear below ground. Liyue was already fully prepared. Ether and his party were moving towards this direction. Liyue's gaze remained fixed on Venti. Who knew if this god, who had lived for over 200 years, was just playing dumb and would discover him. However, until Venti began to play his lyre, Liyue didn't see Venti glance in his direction. Instead, Diluc took an extra look at the bush on the cliff edge. After all, a bush growing directly on the cliff edge was indeed a bit illogical, but could someone have known in advance that they would come here? That seemed unlikely. Diluc temporarily put aside the thoughts in his mind. Compared to a messy bush, Valen's matter was more important right now. The melodious sound of the lyre slowly spread with the wind, and a strong gust of wind quickly responded. From Liyue's perspective, his target had arrived. Using the bush to block the view, Liyue slowly emerged from the dirt pile behind the unseen perspective of the others, and slowly slid down the cliff edge. At this moment, Valen was roaring at Barbatos. Good opportunity. Jump. Lingyi aimed precisely for the scales on Dvalin's tail. Other parts were sensitive and easily detected by Dvalin, and his natural protective coloration would blend well with the scales. Lingyi clung firmly to the tail, using a grappling hook to tightly secure himself and bind himself to Dvalin. The conversation above quickly ended, and Storm Terror roared and quickly ascended into the sky. Lingyi also closed his eyes in excitement. The last time I rode a roller coaster was in my previous life. However, Lingyi soon went from a roller coaster to a pendulum ride, a pirate ship, and finally another roller coaster. If slimes couldn't vomit, Lingyi would probably have lost consciousness by now. After an unknown amount of time, Dvalin finally stopped. The corrosion of the poisoned blood on his back made Dvalin howl in pain. The abyss mage who had been nearby was now nowhere to be seen, having been flung away by the strong winds. This meant that at this moment, only Lingyi and Dvalin were present. This location was Storm Terror's lair. Good opportunity. Dvalin. Dvalin. Lingyi jumped off Dvalin and came before him. Dvalin was currently lying on the ground in pain. As he opened his eyes, he saw a tiny hydro slime hopping in front of him, then directly transforming into a human form before his eyes. Lingyi quickly introduced himself. Dvalin, hello, I am Lingyi, and I am here to help you. I can help you deal with the blood clots on your back. Dvalin did not easily trust outsiders, especially since this poisoned blood had corroded him for a long time, and even Barbatos could not easily purify it. And this unknown slime in front of him? Dvalin was more inclined to believe that it was something else disguised in this form, rather than a slime truly becoming sentient. Therefore, it was even less credible. Dvalin decisively refused, no need. After saying that, he prepared to wave his claw to drive Lingyi away. Agilely dodging the attack, Lingyi added, do you really not want to get rid of the poisoned blood? You just need to give me 1 minute. I can prove it to you. Dvalin finally stopped his attack, staring directly at Lingyi. Whose side are you on? The abyss? Or neither side? To be precise, I am from beyond Teyvat. I know that the abyss's corruption comes from beyond this world, which is why I have a way to solve it. Lingyi wasn't boasting. After he got Dvalin's crystal eyes, he had tried it. He didn't have a vision, so he wouldn't be harmed by the filth inside the crystal eyes. As for purification ability, he had that too. However, just before the crystal eyes was about to be purified, Lingyi quickly paused his actions and immediately put it into his backpack, allowing the crystal eyes to remain in its defiled state. Later, he gave it to the traveler for purification, fearing Venti would discover it. Lingyi could only create a situation with no evidence. Lingyi guessed that perhaps he, like the traveler, came from beyond the world of Teyvat, which is why he had no reaction. Or perhaps the power of the abyss was only harmful to creatures of the Teyvat world, and he was merely inhabiting a slime body. His true form was still his original appearance from his own world, otherwise, he wouldn't have taken on his original appearance when transforming. Hearing Lingyi's words, Dvalin finally calmed down completely. Then, please proceed. Chapter 19, Smooth Resolution. To be honest, Lingyi hadn't expected it to go so smoothly. The moment her hand touched the blood clot, it began to dissolve. It didn't even require powerful attacks like the traveler used. It was like an elegant, painless surgery. If there was any difference, it was that when she touched the clot on Dvalin's back, there seemed to be a strange, untouchable mist that gradually dissipated as she approached. Although invisible, the sensation was incredibly peculiar. It was probably similar to putting a hand over hot steam. Dvalin stretched his body, feeling an unprecedented sense of relief, as if a millennium of heavy burdens had been instantly lifted from him. Dvalin once again looked at the small damselette before him. You are truly incredible. But I still have to say, thank you. Lingyi finally relaxed, reaching out to stroke Dvalin's scales. You're welcome. If you really want to thank me, please keep it a secret. Now relaxed, Lingyi's mind unconsciously began to wander, carefully recalling the sensation from just now. Wow. So this is what dragon scales feel like. It's amazing. I wonder if I'll ever get to touch Zhongli's in the future. If not, Azdaha's would be fine too. Dvalin also knew that the damselette before him was no ordinary person. If it was just to keep her identity a secret, he was naturally willing. However, he also had something he wanted to know. Of course, but I have a question, and I hope you can answer me. Why did you help me? Lingyi looked up at Dvalin's eyes. Although she couldn't discern his emotions, there was an indescribable firmness. Lingyi decided to be honest for once, after all, she wasn't completely heartless. Then she solemnly said, perhaps, it's for the people of Mondstadt. After all, I heard merchants and adventurers in the tavern complaining about you. Trade routes were blocked, orchards were destroyed. Since I have the ability to help them, why wouldn't I? Dvalin also remembered when he fought the poison dragon for Mondstadt. Back then, it wasn't just because of his identity as one of the four winds, perhaps it was because of the people's prayers, or perhaps because of the melodious zither music. Thank you again for your help. If you ever need me in the future, you can use this to summon me. Farewell then. A huge blue-green scale appeared in Lingyi's hand. The wild wind rose again. Dvalin flapped his wings, feeling the long-lost lightness, and soared towards the high heavens, with the gentle and Mo element accompanying him. Lingyi watched Dvalin fly away, put the scale into her backpack, and turned to look at the storm terror's lair below. Since I'm already here, why not grind for a bit? Moreover, this area is enveloped by hurricanes, meaning it's an uncharted adventurer's territory, which implies an abundance of treasure chests. Humming a tune, Liyue lit up the statue of the seven in the waypoints, collected the oculi, and finally, of course, demanded protection fees from the hilly churls below. While Liyue was diligently grinding, Venti and the others gathered again at the winery to discuss their next move. This operation had completely failed, so they could only choose a more difficult alternative plan, directly confronting Dvalin. That's too dangerous. Little Paimon imagined Dvalin's huge claws swatting them away and quickly shook those dangerous images out of her head. With such sharp claws, just one swipe, no, perhaps just being hit by a violent and Mo element gust would be enough to kill them. At this moment, a huge shadow once again flew over the winery, just as Ether had first seen Dvalin. Wait a minute. Why would Dvalin appear here? Paimon was almost scared senseless, and the others also drew their swords. Venti stood at the front, looking at his old friend. Something seems off. Dvalin had already landed in the open space in front of the winery, his gaze fixed on Venti. I'm back, Barbados. Asterisk. Liyue was happily grinding here. Looting treasure chests was indeed the second happiest thing on the Teyvat continent. You ask about the first? That's eating, of course. The chance to devour 3 barbecue meals a day without getting fat isn't something you get every day. Liyue habitually activated elemental sight and looked up towards the heights, as some tricky treasure chests always like to hide halfway up mountains. But this glance upwards was truly astonishing. A white humanoid figure? At this time, who else could pass through the heavy storms and enter the Storm Terror's lair? The Abyss Twin. Lumen. Liyue was certain that Lumen had already seen her and had been observing for who knows how long. Several Abyss mages surrounded her, eager to act. Oh no. Liyue almost instantly wanted to run. Although she had saved Dvalin, she had also directly sabotaged the Abyss's plan, firmly drawing their hatred. In the game, Ether did it, so Lumen naturally wouldn't hold it against her brother. But for Lumen, Liyue was just a stranger. A stranger who ruined her plans. Wouldn't that make her a complete eyesore and a bitter enemy? Liyue had already imagined 1,000 ways she could die. But in just a few seconds, when Liyue looked up again, Lumen was gone. To confirm, Liyue even used a waypoint to move to the top of the tall tower to verify Lumen's position. But she only saw the distant back of a ruin guard. The Abyss mages were also gone. She just left? Could it be that she saw the plan failed and gave up? Anyway, after all that, Liyue had no mood to explore the map anymore. After activating the necessary waypoints, she immediately returned to the entrance of Mondstadt city and sat down at the front of the Good Hunter restaurant. She went straight to feasting. If something makes you unhappy, one meal can fix it, which is exactly like Nahida's toilet theory. Having not eaten all morning, Liyue immediately devoured 2 plates of honey-glazed radish stir-fry, and after finishing, had a glass of homemade fruit wine. Simply delightful. She believed it wouldn't be long before Mondstadt city fully returned to normal. Liyue was currently standing at the city gates. In the original storyline, hilly churls would attack Mondstadt city, but due to Liyue's intervention, Dvalin recovered early, and a large number of hilly churls in the wilderness were eliminated, preventing them from gathering to threaten Mondstadt city. Counting it this way, her trip seemed quite worthwhile. Liyue silently gave herself a thumbs up in her heart. This journey to Teyvat was not in vain. Of course, Liyue wasn't without selfish motives. For example, the shop opening plan that Liyue had previously abandoned, she had now improved. She couldn't really proceed with her next steps until this dragon disaster ended. Mondstadt now was like a semi-primitive society, transportation relied mostly on walking, and communication mostly on shouting. Look at Fontaine, they're already semi-automated, while here they're still forging by hand. Ahem, of course, she didn't mean to disparage, but after seeing the situation in the city, this little countryside really had too many areas for improvement. So she could completely disregard the previous model and directly create a fully automatic vending machine, for example, selling milk tea. Chapter 20, A Chance Encounter. Of course, this wasn't creative plagiarism, the people in Inajima call it Dango milk, and the vending machines in Fontaine sell Fanta. Combining the two is Liyue's own original idea. However, this isn't something that can be solved by simply coming up with a recipe, the first thing to address is the ingredients. But right now, staying only within the regions of Mondstadt and Liyue leaves too little room to maneuver. So, Liyue decided to temporarily leave Mondstadt to search for ingredients elsewhere. And unlock some of the map along the way. Finally, since she couldn't provide an explanation, she had to temporarily hide from Venti and the others. Ahem, let me clarify beforehand, this last point is definitely not the main objective, it's just a side benefit. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was still at the winery and hadn't returned, Liyue left the gates of Mondstadt and ran toward Liyue, heading straight for Jueyun Karst. That's exactly where Jueyun chilies grow. Mondstadt has Barbara's spicy drink, so it wouldn't be too much for me to make a spicy milk tea, right? She didn't follow a strict plan, returning any sealies she found along the way and looting any obvious treasure chests guarded by monsters she could defeat, prioritizing a carefree approach. What's that? Liyue stood on the bridge near Stone Gate, looking into the distance, where a bunch of strange hilly churls lay on the ground. Getting closer, she saw these hilly churls were actually emitting a black aura. Liyue was about to reach out and touch one to see if it was the same as the corruption on Dvalin. Don't touch it. A voice both familiar and strange rang out beside her ear. Ah! That voice. Ling Yi suddenly remembered that this was clearly a daily commission, so the person standing behind her must be a demon. Ah, bah, I got sidetracked. It's Xiao. Turning her head, she indeed saw the familiar large tattoo on his arm, the 3.5 foot tall adeptus. Are you a traveler come to Liyue? It's dangerous here, please leave as soon as possible. Ling Yi suddenly felt the awkwardness of meeting an idol. She froze for a moment, wanting to pull a portion of almond tofu out of her bag, but then vaguely remembered she hadn't bought the recipe yet, so she ended up pulling out thin air. Hee. Looking at the Fontaine lady before him who seemed scared witless, Xiao didn't know how to strike up a conversation. He had fulfilled his duty to warn her, but the person in front of him seemed a bit slow and didn't know to leave the danger. He was considering whether to say it again. Ling Yi finally snapped out of it and hurriedly fumbled out a freshly picked Jueyun chili. Ah. This. Thank you, this is for you. After speaking, Ling Yi was afraid Xiao wouldn't take it, so she forced the Jueyun chili directly into his hand. Then she turned and ran, going all the way to the other end of the bridge, looking back every 3 steps. Xiao looked at the Jueyun chili in his hand, he couldn't throw it away, yet holding it felt odd. Watching the overly energetic Fontaine lady in the distance, Xiao thought helplessly. But it's not bad, is it? Consider it a reward for this demon-slaying excursion. I'll accept it then. After running far away, Ling Yi finally patted her flushed face. What kind of mess had she just made? A Jueyun chili? Xiao would probably never even touch such a thing. After calming down, Ling Yi regretted her actions every single second. She had been so stupid she hadn't even told Xiao her name. As expected, beauty easily makes one lose their mind. Ling Yi actually liked Xiao a lot outside of the game, even considering him her male god. Meeting such a big star so suddenly, she really lacked experience. But next time, definitely next time. Though she was reluctant, Ling Yi decided to leave this area for now. Her grand opening should be as soon as possible. At worst, she'd unlock the waypoints first and live at Wangshuan every day from now on. Watching over my baby Xiao. Ahem, stalker-like behavior isn't encouraged. Ling Yi just wanted to build a good relationship and then send almond tofu every day. Now that she was in the game, she naturally wanted her male god to live a better life, not just live off the wind and dew every day, and even eat snow. This is just a fan's normal protective behavior, please do not overinterpret it. The stairs at Wangshuan were broken, so Ling Yi had to take the simple elevator up. A cool breeze blew against her face, which was quite pleasant. Wait. A cool breeze? Ling Yi looked up and saw a large patch of dark clouds drifting over from the distance. Crack. Rumble. A bolt of lightning struck straight down from the sky, nearly hitting the top of Ling Yi's head. Having stayed in Mondstadt's favorable weather for so long, she had truly forgotten about the fickle weather outside. Moreover, the lightning in the game always struck near the player. Ling Yi didn't want to gamble on whether her health bar would drop first or if she'd be knocked unconscious if she got hit. Ling Yi scurried into the inn's interior. The inn's boss was behind the counter, watching her. This wasn't the game, nobody cared if you jumped on the counter there, but if you dared to get too close to the counter here, the bodyguards would haul you out. Ling Yi had no choice but to tidy her clothes and approach the counter. Boss, I need to stay here for a night. Alright, here is the key. The room is downstairs. Vergoldet quickly completed the check-in process. Actually, Ling Yi didn't want to stay here, but this thunderstorm wouldn't stop anytime soon, and she didn't have Paimon, the god of time. So she could only wait in the inn for a while. Plus, it was already late, so resting for a night was fine. Of course, being able to fish for some recipes from the boss and the chef, Smiley Yang Xiao, and making some almond tofu were also options. Taking the key, Ling Yi headed straight for the kitchen. Chef Smiley Yang Xiao was currently resting at a table in the corner. Hello, I am the adventurer Ling Yi. May I borrow the kitchen for a bit? Smiley Yang Xiao naturally wouldn't make things difficult for Ling Yi and simply waved his hand in agreement. She happened to have collected quite a few ingredients: lotus heads, calla lilies, various meats, salt, and other materials. Whatever Ling Yi wanted to make, she had it. Soon, various aromas wafted from the kitchen, and even Smiley Yang Xiao came from the table behind the screen to stand behind Ling Yi. Little girl, your cooking skills are quite good. Although in Ling Yi's eyes, it was just like in the game where she only had to wait for a progress bar, in the eyes of these residents, it seemed she was using the cookware to cook normally, making Ling Yi feel a bit embarrassed. After all, back home, she was actually a kitchen hazard, wasn't she? She felt a bit sorry for people who practiced so hard. Ling Yi could only scratch her head and say, it's just average, really. However, Smiley Yang Xiao also noticed that Ling Yi had cooked over 20 portions of almond tofu in one go, which was truly a bit excessive. Was she also a loyal fan of almond tofu? He then observed carefully, every single plate of tofu was sliced with uniform thickness. This was definitely not the result of a single day's work, even he couldn't guarantee such perfection. It seemed this adventurer from Fontaine, despite wearing a fancy dress unsuitable for cooking, was unexpectedly a formidable chef. Ling Yi stood by, breaking into a cold sweat as she watched Smiley Yang Xiao's reactions. Since these were system-produced, every plate was naturally identical. Would he notice something? Ling Yi's hand slipped in her nervousness, and she even burnt a plate of fried eggs. No, I'm done. It seems I need to buy a stove. From now on, I'll have to find a secluded place whenever I want to make something. Ling Yi awkwardly put away all the dishes one by one and gave Smiley Yang Xiao a slightly apologetic smile. Thank you, chef. I'll be going now. Smiley Yang Xiao didn't seem to want to let Ling Yi off so easily and was about to ask something. Fearing the chef would insist on asking for tofu slicing tips, Ling Yi slipped away again, running incredibly fast, habitually heading upstairs. A quick dash. Wait. Why is this stair corner so small? Ling Yi spectacularly stepped into thin air at that spot where newbies often fall off. It's over, I'm going to lose so much face. Ling Yi even forgot to open her wind glider, reaching out her hand to try and grab the railing, but she was a step too late and could only watch helplessly as she fell downward. Careful.